God is sovereign over everything. He is sovereign over the entire universe. He is sovereign over nature. He literally has created everything that exists out of nothing.
It is the doctrine of sovereign election that empowers and ignites missions, and it is the doctrine of sovereign election that guarantees the success of missions around the world.
We will not build the church according to the changing whims of an ungodly culture. We will change that ungodly culture by the power of the immutable gospel.
All I have is God wrapped himself in flesh, died on a cross, nailed my sin thereto, was placed in the grave, rose again on the third day, ascended to the right hand of the Father, and is there making intercession for me until such time as my salvation is completed and he takes me home.
The more they see, the more they will love him. Stop giving them all this silly fodder and life principles and lay before them. Live your life in solitude, crying out to God. Live your life on your knees. Live your life with your Bibles torn asunder. Live your life for the people of God to be able to present to them the beauty of what he is, the glory of his cross.
There is no such thing as Mother Nature. God rules and reigns over everything. There's not a leaf that falls from a tree that God did not call it to fall at that very moment. God is in control of every single thing, meticulously ruling over the entire universe. Join us for the 2023 G3 National Conference on the Sovereignty of God.
Grace and peace, you guys. April Chapman here with the Standard of Truth podcast. Happy Friday. It has been an amazing week. You guys, we are in the land of the living. Shout out to everyone who has chosen to join me on this evening, whether you are watching on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or Rumble, you are welcome here. Hopefully I sound okay. I know my moderators will let me know in the live chat if my audio has been possessed by Satan himself. but I think we're doing okay. Also, welcome to any of my new subscribers. Hopefully, you will find today's show edifying, and I'm so glad to see so many of you who join me week in and week out. Whether you are one of my day one subscribers or one of my moderators, I am just glad to be with you this evening. Now, today's show, you guys, it is super important. And I am going to be joined by a special guest. Now, as you guys know, I am very concerned, deeply concerned about the state of the Black community, particularly within the urban context. Why? Because I'm from the urban context, right? I'm from New York, born and raised in the Bronx. And I understand the grit and the grime of urban communities. But I understand that the problems that are plaguing our urban communities, they do have an ultimate root cause, which is sin. But then there are layers within that sin paradigm that I actually want to highlight and talk about this evening. You guys, the effects, we just have to be honest. The effects of progressivism, they are felt deep all over this country. But in urban America, particularly, it just seems to be wholly captivated and have it in its grip. And while I recognize, y'all, I can't save America, right? Only faith in Christ alone can do that. However, I do believe that the Lord uniquely equips all of us to some degree to reflect his glory here on the earth. And the way we do that is by actively engaging with the culture and not running away from the culture. So, in case you haven't noticed, we are in the middle of a cultural war, right? Our culture is pushing a heavy narrative of Marxism and socialism and, Lord forbid, communism, which all of those seek to dethrone God, elevate mankind, and just to stoke the flames of division and chaos. And we see, you guys, y'all know, I did a show earlier this week on the Breakfast Club, right? The Breakfast Club, shows like it and its culturally toxic key players, such as your Charlemagne the Gods, or even individuals such as Roland Martin or Joy Reid, Whoopi Goldberg, Jamal Bryant, Raphael Warnock, Al Sharpton, you name it. There's a list of others who sit in their ivory towers selling their godless souls to the enemy of this world for the sake of selfish gain. All the while, the minds of many people are overtaken through deception and lies and a demoralized, wicked culture. So I decided for today's show, I wanted to bring on a guest, someone who I found so intriguing that I just had to have him on so we could just have a sit-down discussion about these issues. My guest tonight is Jerod Jordan, who is an Atlanta native. For those of y'all don't live in Georgia, it is rare to meet a native from Atlanta. He is a native Atlantan who is the founder of the Foundation for Conservative Culturalism. And I know that our liberal social justicians, they just love calling conservatives coons. They call us all kinds of names, but I can guarantee you, Jerod is one dude that you will think twice before you think about uttering the words coon out of your mouth to him. Because for one, y'all, Jerod is from the SWATs, okay? Now, for the uninitiated, here in Atlanta, the SWATs that's Southwest Atlanta. Not Atlanta, it's Atlanta, right? So it comes with a little grit to it, right? And so calling him a coon and think that it's just going to be a beautiful day in the neighborhood, no, sir. This is not Mr. Rogers, okay? I just wanted to get that out there. But seriously, Jerod has brilliantly systematized what he believes is happening in urban communities all over this country. And he seeks to educate as many people as possible about the wicked agendas that are at work in hopes of waking people up and empowering them to reject the culture and to cling to three things: cling to Christ, character, and conservatism. So please join me in welcoming my very special guest, Mr. Jerod Jordan.
Thank you so much
Hey,
for having me.
hey, Jerod, how are you this evening?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing? Happy Friday
I
to you.
I know. Thank you for joining me. I'm so glad to have you on. You and I spent a considerable amount of time talking
Hmm.
on the phone the other day, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was such a breath of fresh air to hear someone like you articulate so many of the things that we're going to talk about tonight. And I just want to send a very special shout out to our mutual friend, Christopher Harris. Chris is like a brother to me from another mother, but we have the same father. And he is my dear brother in the Lord, and I'm so grateful for him and his organization, Unhyphenated America, and all the work that he does there. So actually, I'll be bringing Chris on one of these month of Sundays. I need to just coordinate it and make that happen. But Jerod, please go ahead. I want you to briefly introduce yourself to the audience by just telling us a little bit about yourself and why you are so passionate about this topic.
Sure, sure. And again, thank you, April, for having me on. Again, I am Jerod Jordan. I'm from right here in the SWATs. And just for your audience to know, SWATs does stand for Southwest Atlanta Too Strong. Okay, so that's where a lot of people, that's how you know you're talking to a native ATLian or whatnot. So, but I attended Mays High School, which is to me the premier high school in the history of Atlanta, bar none. Legacy to keep, image to uphold. And throughout my years here in Atlanta, I've come to learn a few things. And I think that as we get older and mature more, we start to really you have to come into your own even more so. If that makes sense. Like you have to kind of get away from groupthink. You have to kind of start to see things in a very unique vision, which is all your own. I think to really move forward in life, whether it's professionally, personally, or kind of a combination of both, or even socially in that sense. And you start to kind of choose a tribe that is more value based than status based. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so for me, I think one of the main things that I learned, and believe me, I have done a lot of self sabotage in my life. And I got sober about 5 years ago. I think it was June 6th, 2018, the last time I had a drink. And from that point, when I asked God to defeat me, I realized that it's something bigger and much more powerful than what's up here. If that makes sense, and what's in here, and that's God. And I'm not the person. I'm learning about the Bible. I try to as much as possible because I'm very strong-minded. Very strong-willed, and I think that the humbleness that I've kind of been able to acquire because of I asked God to defeat me has been the best decision I've ever made. Because I tell people all the time, when you life up, you learn up.
Mm.
Okay, and by life up, I mean f up. Okay, and I did a lot of effing up basically in my time. So as I learned to learn up when I life up, things became a lot clearer, and I took the time to really understand why I was acting and behaving in certain ways. And I take accountability for everything. I do think as a man, you must be responsible, accountable, and disciplined at all times. That's what makes you a man, and that's really what makes you masculine. And for me, it was the best thing about the discipline part because you can reflect to move forward, if that makes sense. And so
Right.
when I started understanding these things, I was always good with words. My mother, my wife, they always tell me you have a gift for gab, use it. And so what I started doing was kind of like taking a step back and just looking at my society. Why do we operate the way we do? And the question came up, you know, what is blackness? And this is a couple of years ago, and I'll be honest with you, it really did change how I viewed things because I started to look at blackness as not how you look, but the construct based on how you look and the category of that and the mannerisms, the behaviors, the beliefs you have to be black. So that one of the first questions I would ask myself was, who are these arbiters or the barons of blackness? Who are these people that make up the rules to be black? Because if you don't think and act a certain way, they call you a sellout, like you said, a coon. And by the way, coon, I say, stands for a completely opposite of N words. Okay. And I think, so yes, I am one, if that makes you feel good, and I started listening to people talk, and it was from this viewpoint that was always about, again, color and what that meant to be black love, black excellence, black this, black achievement. I'm like, what's the differentiator about it? It's achievement, it's love, it's excellence. And really, when I started to kind of understand what it was doing, you look at people differently. And around that time, Donald Trump ran for office. And when Donald Trump ran for office, I had really never seen a lot of people kind of divide down the middle. And it seemed to me that more people were like, you can't vote for Donald Trump if you're black. Seriously. And even in my family, if that makes sense. My wife and I, we started to kind of say, like, well, wait a minute now. Because Hillary Clinton, I don't care what anybody says, there was no way I was going to vote for her or whatnot. And to make a long story short, I really started paying attention to what I already kind of was feeling in the background a little bit. That this is one of the biggest lies that's ever been told, that you have to think and act a certain way because of how you look. And I call it the hustle of how you look. And to me, that's what blackness is. So what I started doing was just kind of cataloging my conversations with people, conservatives, family and friends who obviously were liberal and vote Democrat just because, and even some different religious people that were in my life. And I noticed a pattern. And it was the conservatives that were vilified. They were basically, in a sense, they were socially persecuted, specifically here in the A or Atlanta. And I started to kind of really ask myself, well, why is that? Because these are some good people here. And one of my best friends, he went to Douglas High School, the school with no windows, as I say. Yeah, exactly. So
don't be up on Doug, not today.
No, they beat us in football last weekend, so I'm gonna take all my shots I can at them. But
I got
he kind of started to kind of take me down a pathway to get me to see things, and he's very successful. And he just started, really asking me certain questions about everything, and I started going back and looking at everything in my life that really applied to what is it that you believe, and I believe in myself. I really do. I'm self-reliant, and I started to understand how when you adhere to color culture, as I describe it now. But you lose yourself in a sense because you have to capitulate to their rules. And by their rules, again, I'm talking about the barons of blackness or the arbiters of African Americanism.
All right, well, hold on. That was on my list of questions to ask. So I don't want you to get ahead.
Okay.
When we spoke the other day, and I invited you on, I explained that I wanted you to help my audience to understand what the heck is happening in our communities all over this country, particularly the urban ones. And because you are a master wordsmith, when we last spoke, you mentioned this phrase, words are the way you worded it, you said words are our frontline assets in this culture war. So what I want you to do before you start defining the barons of blackness and these arbiters of blackness, I first need you to break down what it is that you mean when you said that our words are our frontline assets in this culture war. Explain to us what you mean when you say that.
Sure. If you think about culture and you think about communication, how do you do it? You use words. Words are your frontline assets. And one of the things as a staunch conservative, I feel like, and also as a Christian, we don't win enough language battles. And if you can't win those language battles, you can never win the culture war. And I would say since the civil rights operation of the 60s, conservatives and Christians alike have been losing the culture war they've been losing too many language battles. And the culture war has shifted our country more leftward. And I would say, and I call them lefticals, by the way, because I like to ridicule their behavior, their thought process, and their philosophy. Because their philosophy is rooted in the idea that man is the highest being of all. Okay, they want you to be ruled by man and have nothing else that you can believe in or have faith in. And that's the true philosophy of the leftical. But when you look at the words that are used, we use too much of Lucifer's language in our everyday lives. And we've been losing the language battles ever since then. And because of that, we've been losing the culture war, where we see all these things that are in part of our society that you and I both know that is not part of what God intended for us. Okay, that is
So
not.
give me an example when you say, or when you talk about Lucifer's language.
Okay.
Maybe give us some concrete examples so that we can see that, wait a minute, we have adopted this worldview and we have allowed language to be usurped by these bad actors when we know God gave us the gift of language. Like, words are his thing. So if you're saying that Lucifer's language has kind of infiltrated Christian speak or conservative speak, give us some examples of what you mean by that.
Sure. Think about this right here. This term, very simple. Black people.
Okay.
Show me book, chapter, and verse of the Bible where God created black people, or white people, or brown people.
I know based on the testimony of Scripture that we are all from Adam, right? So from the race of Adam, it comes one race, and
Mhm.
then you have ethnicities and different people groups. Because of what happened in the Tower of Babel, when our language was, everybody was given their own language and they were scattered. But you are
Mhm.
right; we cannot appeal to the Scriptures to say what is a black person or what is a white person. We had ethnicities. If you lived in Rome, you was a Roman, or if you were Greek, or you were a Sumerian, which was like kind of like a hybrid. Your Ethiopians, your Egyptians. You were named based on the region or the area or the clan that you came from. But you're right. I can't really appeal to what is a black person or what is a white person.
I've never heard of in the history of humanity, the country named black or the country named white where people are from. Never heard of it.
You're
Can't
right.
find it in any history book or anything like that. And what that does is, again, that's Lucifer's language. And again, Lucifer's language, the 3D effect is to deceive, divide, and destroy.
Hmm.
So when you
I like.
talk about black people and white people, you're dividing what God created, which was man and woman. Genesis 1:27.
Right.
He created man in his own image. He created woman in his own image, and they in his own image. He didn't say anything about the construct of a colorized culture or a colorized, humans or anything like
Right.
that. And so for me, that's one example. I'll give you another example that I was telling Chris about earlier today. Can you tell me in the Bible where the word abortion is?
Mm. I mean, we have, that word in its context, the way you're using it, it's not in scripture. The only text that we can appeal to was child sacrifice or passing your children through the fire. But murder, it's simple. Murder is the willful and malicious taking of a life of another image bearer with malicious intent and forethought. It's just murder, but it's not. Abortion is another term. I see where you're going.
Because we use it every day as if it's part of the norm. And again,
Mm,
it's loose with language because you have to look at the intent behind that. They want you to believe that abortion is about women's reproductive rights in their language. Okay. And I'm
right.
not going to sit there and try to have the abortion, litigate the abortion case on your podcast or anything. But when we
We
talk
can.
about, first of all, again, I call it child assassination in the womb. And
Mm,
and I try to be as purposeful as possible with my words because there's no way you can tell me that you can justify a woman conspiring with a so-called doctor to assassinate her child in her womb, but she can't because she wants to basically kill the baby, right? Murder the
right.
baby. But if she goes off and does meth or crack or something like that, and the baby is killed, she goes to jail for murder.
Right.
How does that work? So again, the language that we use and that we allow ourselves to use is so important because it changes the meanings of things. And when you can change the meaning, you can shift perception. And one of the best things that we can do with words is to basically influence interpretation. When you can influence how people interpret things, it can help them to shift their perception and their perspective as well. And so when we talk about again this idea that we're going to say abortion rights, think about what you're advocating for now. as a Christian or as a conservative if you are pro-choice. Abortion rights, you're advocating what the Bible says not only is a sin, but it's basically one of the worst you can do. You're killing life, the unborn child.
Right.
Okay, and so that those are two examples of Lucifer's language now, and people don't look at it that way, but I do. I'm advocating that we start to again because the more and more you are aware of the language that you're using, you will realize how words are our frontline asset in the culture war. Words help us win language battles.
I like how you said that. It's interesting that you bring that up because one of my subscribers, shout out to you, Brother Marshall. I saw your email today. He sent me an email of a tweet by a very prominent Black pastor, Bishop Paul Morton, who tries to be, I call it Weasley with words, and he embodies exactly what you're saying by using Lucifer's language. He calls himself trying to build this biblical case for the pro-choice position and uses the text, life and death are in the power of the tongue, or I present before you blessings and cursings and choose, and he takes that word choice and then tries to extrapolate from that see, God is interested in you choosing, but we can't tell you what to choose. And it confuses me because I'm like, how does a preacher of the word can't stand flat-footed and articulate that baby murder in the womb is baby murder in the womb? I don't care. You try to sanitize that language and say, it's the choice because God's not going to twist your arm to do right. You're correct. You're correct in that. But do you see, would you argue or say that that's an example of someone using Lucifer's language as opposed to calling it what it is? Like, what would, this is probably going to lead us down another rabbit trail because I'm sure you have a lot to say about this. What would motivate a pastor such as him or Raphael Warnock, right, to take this position and adopt Lucifer's language?
First of all,
go ahead. I want you to go in.
Okay, what is a Black pastor?
See, now I got to check my own language. Okay,
like,
I'm here.
Because why are we colorizing Christianity or anything of like? Why are we colorizing faith or the word, or these people that are sent here to give us the word? Why are we colorizing? Because again, when you colorize,
I've been trained. I don't know. I want to fix it though.
Well, to kind of address him, and I think this is one of the things that we as Christians, and again, I'm not fully well versed in the Bible as I want to be. I'm getting there. It is a journey for me right now, but I can tell you here in Atlanta, there's 4 P's I learned about growing up in Atlanta. The 4 P's of the ATL in most urban areas, or as I say, the hood. And the hood is cultural, by the way. It's not geographical. But the 4 P's are pimps, pushers, politicians, and preachers. Okay?
It's about to get spicy.
All of them have the same MO. They are good with their words, and they know how to manipulate. Now, the guy you just spoke of, to me, I would call him a pulpit pimp that's peddling poison water to the people. Because he wants you to accept what he now deems to be something that, in his own words, is what is part of the word. And we both know that is not true.
Right.
And this is the problem when you allow these people, okay, I don't know him personally, but when you speak like that, in my mind, you're a counterfeit Christian. You selling snake oil scripture right now. That's what you're doing. And I'm going to tell you that in my own words, because this is what people need to have not only the ear for, but the mouth to give it right back to them, to question them and ask them, show me book, chapter, and verse then. Since you sit there and say these things about abortion, which is, again, part of Lucifer's language to the nth degree, if you really think about it, because the action of abortion, it's horrific, it's barbaric, and I don't care what kind of person you are, but no Christian should even have any affiliation with it to even approve of something like that. That's my personal belief. Okay,
no, that's a biblical position, though. It's exactly. Okay to hold that position on the Standard of Truth podcast. Just want to let that be clear.
Okay, but humans are imperfect as well, so I understand. We are imperfect. But when we have a chance, again, to let people know when they're out here peddling poison well to the people in the name of the word, we must hold them accountable in ways that we have not done in a long time. And our words can do that. That is
Right.
how you start to win the language battles, again, to shift the culture war. If you look at you talked about Raphael Warlock right now at Ebenezer, okay?
Right.
This is why a lot of people are kind of going away from the idea of going to church, because what is being put forth in church and black churches, it's not biblical anymore. It's not. I'm sorry, it's not, because we are using too much of Lucifer's language, and again, that 3D effect: deceive, divide, and destroy. You know those things. That to me is where we have to be mindful as, again, followers of God in Christ. Our words can be much better if we use the words that we know to be the truthful part of it, and not their language. But to really kind of go even further in this, when you talk about the language battles and how words are frontline assets, it gives you a way to look at the world and not, again, colorize your fellow man or colorize your fellow woman. Because I mentioned how when you colorize, you dehumanize people. And when you talk
Right.
about the fact of, with God, I believe that God gave every human being, human soul, his God-given divine, his or her God-given divine birthrights, which is your essence and your worth.
Right.
Okay, your skin color has nothing to do with that right there. I think I asked you the question the other day: does your skin color constitute your character, intellect, or will as an individual?
No.
That's a question you must ask. Exactly. So how can you build a community or a culture around something where it has nothing to do with you, the individual? And this is again why when we see the black community or the black family or black culture, you're absolutely tainting the meaning of those words with that
Right.
adjective. Because black represents a manufactured culture. And here's what blackness is rooted in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I was just about
Okay.
to ask you to talk to me about the culture of blackness. Like, what is that? And is it something that we should be embracing or disavowing? I know the answer, but it's on my list of
I
questions.
think I think blackness was created in the 60s as part of the Marxist communist movement to overtake American culture, because Negro Americans had to deal with conditions. Okay, if you think about slavery, if you think about Jim Crow, you think about all the other in the time of Reconstruction, Negroes for the most part had to deal with Democrat-sponsored atrocities, Democrat-sponsored oppression,
Hmm.
Democrat-sponsored depression. Like I tell people all the time, I am a staunch Republican, full stop, but I'm very disappointed in my party, by the way. But when you ask me about my party is the party of abolition and better conditions. The Democrat Party is the party of oppression, excuse me, oppression, depression, and secession. That should tell you everything right there about the Democrat Party. And in the 60s, if you think about the civil rights, and I call it operation for a specific reason, you saw the birth of the black family. Negro American families had a higher rate of both parents in the home. The marriage rates were stronger. There was more of a culture based around faith and character. Okay, think about it. They didn't do things the way black people do things now. If you think about it,
So are you
black the
you
black
making are you I'm sorry to cut you. Are you making a distinction between Negro American culture and then black culture that emerged in the civil rights movement? Are you trying to build a dichotomy between those two?
I think they're two separate things. And again, when you think about Negro American culture, which was rooted in faith and in family, and
Right.
in the character of those that were about community or whatnot, they had to deal with the conditions,
Right.
just horrific conditions a lot of times, and
Right.
conditions that were not normal as we live in today. They fought
Mm.
for us to have the way we live today. But in that fight, there was a conversion in the civil rights operation of the 1960s, where you saw the building up of the black family. And I think the black family is a product of systemic welfarism. And the war
You
on
said
poverty
did you
saw
say welfareism?
systemic welfarism. Yes.
Mm. Mm.
And when people talk about the system, that is a system that I think, again, and it's a voluntary system when you really break it down, by the way.
It is voluntary.
Okay, so when people say, "Oh, well, the white man did this," no, 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 no. You have agency over your own self. Okay, but when you talk about black culture and the community and the black family, and this pisses a lot of people off. I think it was. Well, I don't think. I know it's a manufactured culture, and it's
Mm.
rooted in loathe and liberation.
Okay, hold on. I'm trying to keep up because I have more questions that are going to stem from what you just said. You said it's rooted
Okay?
in loathe, as in hatred. And what was the other one?
Liberation.
You got to break that down. I'm black and slow, but I understand what you mean. But I need you to break that down
Think
because
about
I hear you.
okay. Think about this right here, and we'll. I know you want to talk about the Breakfast Club interview too, and I won't go past it that much. But you saw a great example of black culture and conservative Christian culture in that one show. So in
Mm,
black culture with loathe, you are taught to loathe everything that is not black first. People who look like you and I, but who don't think like them, they call us sellouts,
mm.
coons, Uncle Toms, house N words out of respect for your audience.
Bootlickers, bed wenches.
Right. And what are they
Uh,
taught to liberate from? America, because they see America as their oppressor. They're taught to liberate from American values. They're taught to
right.
liberate from all the things that they think is anti-black. The main thing is capitalism. They are taught to hate capitalism, loathe and liberation. And from that, what you see right now in black culture, okay, as two staunch results of that is fratricide and nihilism.
You said? Did you say fratricide?
Fratricide.
Frat. I
Frat,
get real tongue
frat,
tied. Is this
yep,
a
yep.
word you made up, or is this an actual word?
Actual word, fratricide. It's where you kill your brother, basically.
I can't say it. It's like my mouth won't work. Fratricide.
I have to
I
make it
got you.
fratricide.
Fratricide. If I can see it, I can say it. But you got me imagining it. It ain't gonna come out right. Okay,
Two,
talk to
two
me.
results. So when you look at statistics, the CDC has kept statistics, and for black men, okay,
Mm.
ages 0 to 44, the number one killer of black men, according to I think the 2021 or 2020 CDC census, and it still may be the same or even worse, but have it 44 from men ages 0 to 44, the number one killer of black men were black men.
Oh yeah, we know that. Now you try to
Name
tell,
any other ethnicity that has that statistic like that, where the number one killer of that particular demographic is basically yourself or your
yourself.
brother, basically.
Fratricide.
Fratricide.
Got it.
Okay? Because they say we brothers, we black brothers, but yet and still, look at all the death and destruction that comes with that in urban
Right.
community. Okay?
Okay.
And nihilism, of course, applies to the women. Because the number one killer of black children is women in the womb, is children in the womb.
In the womb. Right.
Does that make sense now?
That does make sense. It does.
And it's hard for people to look at it that way. It
Right.
truly is. But when you think about it again, why is it like that? They say, well, oh, it's everybody. No, because
Right.
blackness, again, is not rooted in anything natural or Christian. It's a construct.
Mm.
And again, it goes back to who are the arbiters of African Americanism or the barons of or baronesses of blackness? We don't know.
Mm. Right. So I must admit, you guys make sure you like the video, share it with a friend. This is an interesting conversation because even a lot of my deeply held presuppositions are being challenged because I oftentimes I use the language, call it a habit, right? When I have to refer to a particular, like the way I refer to Bishop Morton or Jamal Bryant, like I refer to them as a black pastor because it's instead of me. Well, one, they're not. I don't consider either one of them pastors, but that's the title that they're going by, so I use it. But I always differentiate. I don't do that with white culture, if not that that's a thing, but I do that a lot so that people will know contextually what I'm talking about without even realizing that I'm probably guilty of using this Luciferian language without even realizing it.
Welcome to the primary weapon in the culture war,
Right.
language. That's the primary
So,
weapon we talked about because it changes how you view things. You said he was black because it describes behavior type. It describes not only complexion, but again, how everything has to be affiliated to differentiate or divide. If we're
right.
talking about a pastor, it should be from a Christian or biblical perspective. Okay. And again, when you colorize, you dehumanize. Is that truly a
Wow.
pastor, or is that a money? Is it called a money giver or a money taker? They're called, I think. That got. I had the note on it. It was money givers, or who Jesus expelled from the church.
Oh, the money changers
Money changers. Thank you.
from
See,
the
I'm learning
synagogue.
still.
You
I'm
get
learning
there.
still.
It's all right.
And when you exhibit that type of behavior, to me, you're a money changer. If
Mm,
because again, when you think about what they're preaching,
right.
come on, you let me know. And again, this is I'm not a biblical scholar or anything of that nature, but
Right.
I call balls and strikes now because if I'm going to hold myself to be accountable,
Right.
best believe I'm gonna hold everybody else to that same standard when it comes to how they talk about fellow human beings. And
Right.
colorizing, I will continue to emphasize this. When you colorize, you dehumanize because you take away everything about their essence, their worth, their character, their intellect, and their will as an individual. When you say black person or white person, you don't know them like that, right? Now, if you know a person, you can be much more specific in how you describe that person. We both can agree on that.
Right.
But we want to generalize people. And again, when you generalize people, it creates certain perceptions. And that's
Right.
again part of that's the culture war right there.
Got it.
That's the culture war right there. Okay.
So when I recently did the video on the Breakfast Club, I'm sure you kind of already know this already, but from that video, why I despise shows like that the way that I do. But in light of that show, when you and I spoke on the phone, you mentioned a term that I kind of have to sanitize for the sake of the show. But you said that individuals on that show had been Negro boarded, right? What do you mean by such terminology? Like what does that mean? Break it down as best as you can to convey what you were trying to explain to me.
All right. So for out of respect for your viewers, it's inboarded. It's not Negro, it's inboarded. Okay. NIGGA boarded. Okay. Is that better if I spell it out?
That's
Is that
fine. I mean, we're adults, we're mature.
right?
People use that word flippantly all the time. But it's
Right.
just when you said it, I was like, oh wow, like I got it. It it didn't have much weight when I tried to sanitize it, but I have to do that. But I
It's not meant to be
understand,
sanitized. It's not meant to be sanitized
right,
because when you get waterboarded, that's torture. When you waterboard someone, that is torture.
right,
It is designed to break them. It is designed to do one thing, and that is break them of everything that makes them
right.
who they are. And to give up if they have any information that they may want, or if to say you must bow down or will continue to get beat down, you get waterboarded. And so
So were you?
when you
Go
get
ahead. I'm sorry.
inboard when you get inboarded with in juice, as I say, okay.
I
They're
got
not
you.
using water. They're not using
No,
water. They're using in juice. Okay, so when you hear people and you see it, because you're like, everybody feels that way when you see a certain person behaving a certain way. You be like, this N word crazy, and you know. And when you heard Charlemagne, well, I'm sorry, Leonard, okay, and this man calls himself Charlemagne the God, which I think it is so idolatrous in so many different ways to call yourself a God like that. Man, how many souls you done saved? Can you walk on water? Can you do things that the average person can't do? And the answer to that is hell no, you can't. So
right,
you have these different, personas, these characters and whatnot. But when you're in border with in juice, then they make you put on your in suit. Okay,
So is that what he's wearing?
Oh, absolutely. Because if you think about it, he actually questioned Larry Elder, have you ever heard of N-word, what's wrong with you? When he asked Larry Elder that question, and Larry Elder was
Right.
taken aback by that. And I took some notes on this too, because I was like, wait a minute. You have, and see, for your audience, people like that, dudes like that are called pavement apes. Pavement apes. And I'm going to tell you why.
Pavement apes, like APES. Okay.
Yes, pavement apes. And it's not about, again, how he looks. It's about the fact of
The
he's a
behavior.
moronic man. He's a moronic man that cannot function in freedom. He does not
Oh,
understand function in freedom. Okay? And for Teslin, the other woman, she was so disrespectful. And she was just, it was basically an embarrassment. She's what I call an orangutan. Okay?
I'm stealing that. I'm sorry. That's my
An
word
orangutan.
now.
And again, words matter. It's not about how she looks. It again, because she's
Gorgeous.
She's a female imbecile who cannot manage her misery. If you look at how she acts, you can tell she cannot manage her misery at all. Tell me where I'm lying at, please. And I want people to push back.
Where's the lie?
You know, I'm not talking about how you look. I'm talking about how you present yourself and carry yourself and how
Right.
you think and behave and the words you use, the words they were using. Black
Right.
this, black that. And I just, I was listening to them. I'm like, this is the best show to show you the difference between black culture, okay, and American culture. Now, how in the hell can you put black and American together and call themselves black Americans? You cannot. Blackness, again, is a product of loathe and liberation.
Mm.
They hate everything anti-black and want to liberate from America. Why would you then want to say you got to put this in and call yourself a black American? What is
Yeah.
how is that possible? Why are we colorizing ourselves as a citizenry? I'll give you another good example really quick. How many times do you hear the word black Democrat as opposed to black Republican?
I don't.
You hear black Republican all the time.
Wait, you said what?
How many times do you hear people say the word black Democrat? Not much at all, do you?
No.
How
No,
many times
not
do you hear
much.
people say black Republicans are sellout? They're house Negroes. They're coons, like
Right.
Larry Elder. They
Right.
say black Republican and black conservatives, right?
Right.
Why do you think that is? Because what they're doing is they're putting the bullseye on you to use that language to basically socially persecute them and castigate them for not going with the groupthink of what blackness is all about.
Mm.
You never hear people say black Democrat. You never hear that. Ask yourself
Yeah.
why.
I don't.
Does that make sense now again with the language battles that we
Yeah.
use every day?
I mean, I didn't even realize I'm so guilty of adopting this language. I'm trying to figure out, shoot, how do I refer to these people? How do I communicate now? Because it's a part of my vernacular.
I always say fellow American, fellow Republican, fellow Christian, fellow.
What is that? All right, so you know me and you here. You know that, right?
I'm here. Right.
But I gotta play devil's advocate for a moment because you're gonna have individuals that say that's not sustainable. And I'm wondering if they're saying it's not sustainable because we've been so used to, accustomed, and conditioned to using that kind of language that to deviate away from it, it's like it's too hard. It's like, well, I'm comfortable referring to it that way. Now, I will admit that when it came to I use the term racism in a general sense, but I am more cognizant and more aware that I refer to it as ethnic partiality because that's what the Bible talks about partiality, and then I just added ethnic so that it can be a distinction that I am being partial to someone on the basis of ethnicity. I've trained myself to say that. But now you trying to give me some new language, and I'm a conservative. I'm like, how? I'm trying to picture what life is like, just trying to get rid and shed the vestiges of this Luciferian language, and I'm struggling. Like, well, what am I supposed to say to push back on people who present that kind of argument? How do you train yourself to not refer to it that way? I mean, because I like saying pavement apes. I like that. In a ratchet tank, I'm sold. But in common language, most people are not going to know what I'm referring to when I speak like that.
You're talking about their behavior patterns,
Okay.
their choice design. Again, because again, they choose to adopt that behavior. They choose to make those choices. That's why I don't buy into this idea of black folk in prison like that right there. You don't go to prison because of how you look. You go to prison because of the choices you make. Period.
Mm.
You know, and
Larry
again,
Elder tried to drive that point home with the Breakfast Club, and it was almost like, now I see what you mean when you say it's Lucifer's language, because they know that by and large, that to even get into the prison industrial system, the complex of it, a crime has to be committed. Like, the chances that my husband's going to just get picked up and thrown in jail, minding his business, are very slim. But they wouldn't concede that. They just want to talk about it. Well, they just locking black folks up in prison. I'm like, yeah, but I've never seen them just haul off in droves, random black people walking down the street doing nothing. I've never seen that.
Roland Frierson did. He did a great study on this. Roland Frierson looks like you and I, former Harvard professor. I don't know if he's at Harvard anymore, but because people have to I guess qualify. When somebody says something about quote unquote blackness or whatnot, they got to look like you, which I think is asinine. But when you think about what Roland Frierson did a study, and he outlined how that was one of the biggest myths in the quote unquote black community or whatnot. But to kind of
Right.
get to the point where, you asked about, well, what do I say to people, say this is hard and changing the way you've been inboarded, because that's what it is. That's
I
that's
don't want to
exactly what
be
it is.
imported. I don't want to. I want to come up. I don't want to be down no more.
But you just answered your own question in a sense, because it is hard, because you were basically all of us were in our families, in our surroundings. Very rarely do you meet people who look like you and I, who live in these urban inner cities, that was not inboarded. And again, out of respect for your audience, I won't say what you and I what I've told you what it really means.
Right.
NIGGA boarded with
Mm-hmm.
NIGGA juice, and then you got to put on your NIGGA suit. Okay, so you always have to look at it from that one perspective, and that is
I
how
was
you get people.
I was drowning in juice. I mean, no, seriously. So I've shared with my audience what my life was like before Christ. I was very liberal, right? I was elliptical, okay?
Okay,
And I kind of shared a little bit about this in my Breakfast Club video. No, I did another video as to why I stopped listening to them. Is because I realized after just a set of circumstances that something was going on here that did not match my lived experience, and how I was constantly projecting that loathing and the grievance. I was
the
projecting it
liberation.
out. Right. So I get it. And I know that um being conformed to the image of Christ, and actually repenting of my sin and becoming a Christian had a lot to do with that. But I know lots of conservatives who don't claim the name of Christ, that they got their aha moment too, where they came up from the end juice and was like, what? What?
Yeah,
What have I been doing all this time?
yeah. And to answer your question earlier about change, change is hard.
It
It
is,
is.
right?
But I'll say, where there's growth, there is no comfort, and where there's comfort, there is no growth. You just
Mm,
talked about how you become comfortable with that, because that's what the inboarding does. Again, it's in the family. We were raised, at least I was. I can't speak for everybody that looked like me, but I was raised to vote Democrat from the womb to the tomb,
I
just
was.
because Democrats, were supposed to be the savior of black folks or whatnot. In the civil rights, they call it movement. Again, I call it operation, because I've done my research on Martin Luther King. I've done my research on Bayard Rustin. I've done my research on Stanley Levison and Jack O'Dale and all the different architects of the communist Marxist movement in these urbanized cities. I call it colored communism. Atlanta
Mm.
is a bastion of colored communism, and that's going to piss a lot of people off.
You
It's the
need to break
bastion of
that down. That is that, yeah. You're gonna make a lot of folks mad, but it's okay. I'm used to it.
uh,
You said Atlanta was the capital or the bastion of
colored
color
communism.
color communism. Can you
Colored,
define color communism?
colored.
Colored. Yes. Okay. Break that down for us.
So when you think about how they say Atlanta was basically the birthplace of the civil rights movement, right?
Right.
What has been the trade-off of that? What's the trade-off for equality? And what's the benchmarks for equality, and who are the arbiters of that benchmark?
Was you asking me? Is it rhetorical or you need me to answer?
I'm asking you that, as someone, again, I think you are pretty well astute. What is the trade-off for equality? When the civil rights movement was advocating for equality, right?
Right.
Equality of what? Equality of outcome, opportunity, equality of what, number one? And also tell me the benchmark for that. What is the benchmark?
Like, how do we measure it, you mean?
Yes. How do you measure it? And again, I'll get to the part about Blackness too, because how do you measure equality? What's the benchmark for that? Does that make sense? Because and I understand business. In business, you have a goal, a target.
Right.
And there are certain KPIs, key performance indicators, to get to the benchmark that you're trying to get to. So what's the benchmark for equality? And who are the arbiters of that benchmark? Who says this is equal now? Who says you are now equal in our eyes? So you must believe that you are equal now. Because I'm telling you what that is. That leads to socialism, despotic socialism. Okay? And what people need to understand, if you're asking people to give you equality, you must think this right here. Does your definition of equality match theirs?
9 times out of 10, it doesn't. Because if I give you a bucket of chicken and I have a bucket of chicken, we equal. But I'm like, why is chicken the great equalizer? What if, we never know what is the objective standard of, we are all equal now. Now, to push back some more, some would say, well, we've achieved equality. Now you can't discriminate against someone on the basis of ethnicity or all these other intersectionality segments that pretty soon it's going to be like, one leg, blind eye, diabetics. I mean, it's never going to end. There's always going to be this subclass that they want to divide us in to say, well, we're not all equal. So I guess to your point, the civil rights movement, we really, what is your overarching point? Are you saying we haven't achieved? Because I bemoan the civil rights movement just as much as you do. I have issues with MLK and Bayard Rustin, and I could see how socialism and communism was all up and through that entire movement. But you still have segments of our population that are like, if it wasn't for the civil rights movement, y'all would still be riding in the back of the bus. I disagree. I think legislation we already had from the Constitution. It just needed to be litigated on a federal level. But I want to hear what you're going to say.
So here's the part that was, I think you kind of answered your own question a little bit as you were coming to thinking about it. You kind of was like, yeah.
I'm thinking through it.
Equality is a false god, basically.
I like the way you talk, sir.
Equality is a false god. It's plain and simple. And there's a book called Weekend Language, and it talks about how to speak in very simple terms to have the biggest impact. And that's why I don't use the language of the intellectuals or whatnot, because they try to use big words and all these different, meanings to try to confuse the listener and to make themselves look as if they are smarter than what they really are. It's called intellectualism, in fact. But when we talk about this idea of equality from the civil rights operation, the Democrats, and again, this is where you got to understand what Lyndon Bastard Johnson, when he made this statement, when he said, I have N-words voting Democrat for 200 years. At the time he made the statement, our country was not even 200 years old when he made that statement.
Yeah. You're
right.
You
understand what I'm saying? Now, circa 2020, what did Joe Biden say to Leonard, a.k.a. Charlemagne?
You don't vote for me, you ain't black.
If that does not tell you how they manufactured the black community to do two things, vote Democrat, with three things: vote Democrat and be dependent and obedient to the government. Systemic welfarism.
Do you know that Negro today? One of my other moderators, Vic. Shout out to you, Vic. Shout out to. I sanitized it. I say Negro. Ain't nothing wrong with Negro. I was a Negro. One of my moderators sent me a video of Leonard on another podcast being. I wish I would have pulled that clip. He literally either he's being woefully ignorant on purpose, or I don't know if he just really doesn't know. In his mind, he still doesn't see what the problem was with what Joe Biden said, and he doesn't see how Larry Elder basically dropped the mic. Like he thinks he gave Larry Elder a run for his money, and everybody in the chat is sitting there like, dude, do you really think he just doesn't know?
Pavement ape. Pavement apes don't know how to function in freedom. And again, it's not about how he looks, but you just basically solidified why you know in your mind now that those two words, pavement ape, is the perfect description of who he is and other men like him. I refuse to be a pavement ape because I understand how to function in freedom. I truly do. And it comes from, again, you talked about Christ, character, and conservatism. That is my personal piety right there.
Right.
I am guided by Christ. I'm governed by my character, and I advocate conservatism. Okay?
I love that.
And when people, and again, because I understand what this land, America, was consecrated upon, which is the providence of God.
It was.
Show me anywhere in the U.S. Constitution, okay, where the word slave or black is in the U.S. Constitution. It's not. Now it's in the 13th Amendment, which was written almost 100 years later to the original U.S. Constitution. But you show me in the original document the word slave or black. It's not in there. So when they talk this trash about, oh, well, black folks built it. No, you didn't. If you really want to know, slaves built the South. They built the South.
Yeah.
They built the Confederate States. And it took and this is another question I asked to really kind of get people off their black, pedestal or whatnot. Did the people who fought, bled, and died to free the slaves in order to save the Union, are they your people?
Now those are my people. Those are my people, I would say. But they wouldn't claim them. They keep forgetting that the abolitionist movement would not have been as effective as it was if it wasn't for our white brethren and white counterparts who actively advocated for the abolition of slavery. Why do they always leave that part out?
Because it destroys the propaganda. And I would give people one name to go look up: Isaac T. Hopper. Okay? Isaac T. Hopper. Go look him up. He was a Quaker. He actually is the framer. He put together the framework in the initial foundation for the Underground Railroad that Harriet Tubman gets all the credit for.
Really?
Without that network of families, okay, Quakers, without that network that he helped to set up, okay, you would not have the Underground Railroad. He gets zero credit at all.
I have never heard that person's name a day in my life.
Exactly. Because it will destroy the propaganda, again, that white folks are all bad in America. The language of Lucifer, the omissions, the lies, the deceit, the division, it destroys everything about what this country was built upon. It's in our Constitution. Every man is created equal. We are the only country in the history of humanity that our rights are granted by God and not by man. This scares the hell out of every other monarchy, authoritarian society you can think of. And they want to destroy our way of life because, again, God granted us our rights. And so I want to make sure your audience understands this, where we are today in this culture war. And it's really a spiritual war now. Okay?
I like how you said that.
Exactly, because we have to understand, when you view America right now and the battle that we're in, your philosophy, well, mine at least, is rooted in this right here: your rights versus their rules. Your rights versus their rules. or in the case of the individual person, my rights versus their rules. Because again, when we talk about what America was consecrated upon, what were they fighting against? Tyranny
Right.
of government, tyranny of man, tyranny of the majority.
And now it seems like we're begging to have that. I don't. The part that I struggle with is why is it that the pavement apes and the ratchetangs advocate so much for bigger and larger government? And then another question I have for you is why do you believe that I'm trying to change my language? The Americans that are highly melanated, why do we struggle so much with a relationship with capitalism? I'm trying. You guys listen.
Oh,
I got my what do you call it? I'm in my walker, my baby walker. I'm not walking yet. I get there.
it goes back to being Negro boarded. Okay, it goes back to being Negro boarded with Negro juice and put on your Negro. I almost said that your Negro suit, basically. Because again, when your culture is basically, and here's something I want people to take away too that really will make people mad. There's I would say three core elements of black culture, of blackness:
Right.
idolatry, illegitimacy, and illiteracy.
All right, wait a minute, you got to slow down. Idolatry,
Mm-hmm.
illiteracy.
And illegitimacy.
Okay.
Those are
Because
all
when
predominant in black culture, is it not?
it is, because I don't I distinctly remember or recall when I read, autobiography of Booker T. Washington. He was very, very focused on improving the outcomes of the Negro race. And he received a lot of pushback and opposition from people that looked like him because they didn't want him to focus on education and a healthy doctrine of work, meaning you need to learn a trade. Parents would write to him like, I didn't send, Jethro down there to Tuskegee for him to be making bricks. Like they actually took grave issue with it. And this is probably many of them were either emancipated slaves or one generation maybe out of slavery. There was this on idolatry. Follow me. Okay, my stream of consciousness is going all over the place. So just stick with me for a minute. They had a level of idolatry, but it wasn't an idolatry of blackness. It was an idolatry of we want to be like our white counterparts. We don't want to work. We just want to be able to, like, Booker T. Washington literally tells a story of how a lot of the pastors, in the Southern Circuit could barely read, but they would learn a few big words. And then all of a sudden they felt like they were somebody because they were trying to be like their white counterparts. On some level, I struggled with that because I was like, y'all could have just did it for yourself. Like Booker T is trying to teach them how to do for self, and they were pushing back against him back then. What is that about?
So let me tell you about Booker T. See, Booker T, I get down with Booker T, man. Booker
That's
T
my
told you,
dude.
cast down your bucket.
Yes.
And the Atlanta exposition speech that he gave, where he talked about to your neighbors of the South, okay?
Right.
We have to understand one thing about this man, Booker T. And I'm gonna give you a quote that it sticks with me every time. It's in me. It's damn near part of my essence. He says, "I will permit no man, no matter what his color might be, to narrow and degrade my soul by making me hate him." And again, when you think about that quote from Booker T back then and the conditions this man grew up in, he grew up in slavery. Okay. But he went on to become basically one of the greatest Americans, one of the greatest human beings ever. Okay? That had not a damn thing to do with his skin color. And he's telling you that he's not going to hate or degrade his soul. That soul. I've learned that, and this is something that I'm embracing the trifold nature of man: the spirit, the soul, and the flesh. Now I'm gonna tell you again why I say idolatry and illegitimacy and illiteracy are the three core elements of Black culture, because it teaches you that when you think about systemic welfarism, what we talked about earlier, which is designed to do what? Get people dependent and obedient. Systemic welfarism thrives on subsidizing irresponsibility.
We could just end the show right there. Bro, that's it right there. You got to say it again. Can you say it again?
Systemic welfarism thrives on subsidizing irresponsibility. And I wrote that down to myself because it came to me. It came to me when I was, again, and these are things that I write to myself all the time because I'm seeing the world in such a different way because of
Right.
my understanding of Lucifer's language. I
Mm,
refuse to use it. And when I do use it, I punish myself internally.
right.
I tell you, why are you bowing? Why are you capitulating to color culture? Because that's what you're doing. We should not be capitulating or conforming or genuflecting to color culture at all. That is not who we are as part of God's property and God's
Right.
great creation.
Mm,
We were born man and woman. Look at what these people are professing right now, that you can have a man transition to be a woman. I don't understand how that basically it promotes the idea that God made a mistake.
right.
This idea of trans. The same playbook was used with the idea of color, black.
Mm,
You're
yeah.
modifying your existence as an individual. Again, your essence, your worth, your character, your intellect, and your will, your purpose. And I'll say this here: when you think about color culture requires you to have poverty of the mind.
Why are you in my nose? That's the next question. I was just going to ask you, what do you mean when you say that the Negro, can I say Negro community? Like how we call us? What we doing?
They identify with the black community. This is my personal viewpoint of them. I don't own how they think or act.
Oh, okay. That's them.
They do that. That's them.
Okay.
I have the right to associate myself though. But do
Right.
I choose to? I don't do what they do. Listen. I know what poverty of the mind looks like. I was there. Like I said, I learned up and I lifed up to learn up.
Right. So what do you
I'm
mean
not.
when you say that the black community is suffering from poverty of mind? Explain to us poverty of mind. Because when I hear poverty, my mind automatically goes to money, but you're not thinking about it in those terms, correct?
It's the mass incarceration of their character, purpose, and worth.
Mm,
You
mm,
have to
mm.
give it up
Mass
to be black.
incarceration of your
Your
purpose and
character,
worth. You have to
purpose, and
give
worth.
that up in order
Exactly.
to be a part of the black community.
That's why they call us sellouts. When we think as an individual, when we think as someone who has going to be led by, but guided by our own character, and we understand our purpose, and we're going to pursue our purpose, the purity of our purpose, and we know our worth as an individual, our worth as part of God's great creation. And they got a damn thing to do with blackness. In fact, miss me with that. And
Right.
everything you see on television in urban America in the black community, can you tell me, please, what are the core elements of the black community?
You want crime, sexual perversion,
So
thought
I'm gonna give you another
culture.
acronym. I'm gonna give you another acronym, just so you
Oh,
won't say
okay.
black people. It's called MUT culture. MUT. MUT culture.
Was it
Menacing, unruly, and thuggish culture. MUT culture. And that describes everything about the behavior. Okay, in a lot of urban inner cities, communities, it's wrought with MUT culture.
what was the T?
Menacing, unruly, and thuggish.
Ah. You about to
And
make so many people mad tonight. I'm
that's how
loving
you
it.
that's how you don't colorize. I'm not colorizing them, but I am describing again their characteristics. You know as well as I do how many folk are menacing, and it's not about how they look. See, most people think I'm
Mm-mm.
talking about just black. You got a lot of other folk, as I call prairie maggots too, because them liberals and those I call them prairie maggots. I do. I
My
do.
husband is cracking up over here.
The prairie
What
maggots,
is a prairie maggot?
the liberal, they destroy the land. They destroy land. They destroy everything. The liberal prairie maggots are the architects, again, that people don't want to talk about. Now, I think that's a whole nother show for you. We can do one time, but you get me started on talking about, and I don't call it, nobody calls it white culture, though. Do
Right.
they?
No.
Exactly. It's only one culture that is defined by a color, and it's black. You see it on TV. You see it everywhere that they try to promote this idea to keep folk believing in this idea of blackness. Because
Right.
again, loathe and liberation. These people, that's what made, again, Lyndon Bassett Johnson say, I will have these Negroes voting Democrat for 200 years. And when that swinite up in the White House right now, he's a swinite, a septic, weak, incompetent narcissist engaging in tyrannical endeavors. That's what he is doing. He's a swinite.
Are y'all taking notes? Because I can't keep up. Can some of my moderators just take notes and leave this in the live chat for the replay? Because all of these words, I love them all, and I am such a word thief, right? Like I will give you credit, but I'm gonna adopt it as my own. Swinites?
Swinite. SWINEITE. Swinite. That's what he is. A septic, weak, incompetent narcissist engaging in tyrannical endeavors.
No argument from me there.
You know, and I want people to, because people say, oh, he's just a crazy one. You know, no, I'm not. I understand how Lucifer's language will taint your mind. It will take you in places that you don't need to be at, and looking at your fellow human being. Now, it's a lot of bad people in this world. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
That's why I call them mud culture. They're menacing, they're unruly, and they're thuggish. You know, we have to use better words that we own, that we know, that is not based on, again, Lucifer's language.
Right.
Because everything we're talking about now is a result of their choice design and their behavior and what they do. I can judge your actions. Yes, I can. I can judge your behavior. Yes, I can. It's like these pedophiles, or these, what I call these boy lovers. And that's a whole other, they want to normalize these different things.
Yes.
You see it coming in, the grooming. They want to do all these different things because they learned from the blueprint of Black culture. They created it.
So let me ask you this. This wasn't even in my notes, but now that we're coming out with all these definitions and we're assigning words to a lot of this behavior that we see. Are you aware of the Chicago mayor, Brandon Johnson, when he was asked about, what are you going to do about all of these teen wildouts, how they just come and they just tearing up stuff. And someone referred to the mob behavior, and he just got downright offended and was like, no, we're not going to use, that kind of language. And I'm sitting there like, are they really trying to gaslight us, to make us think that what we see is not what we see? Can you speak to that for a little bit? Like, what is he? Because it concerns me that people in the Negro communities in Chicago, they voted for this man, and he keeps showing them exactly how he is not interested in the violent crime. He is literally allowing these children to run amok on purpose, and will get upset and offended if you call it what it is.
Listen, it's very simple. He is what they call him a community leader, correct? The Black people do. The Black community calls him a community leader, right? They call Lightfoot a community leader when she was mayor, right?
They did.
All these are of the ilk of the Marxist communist mentality, right? These are what I call your animosity agents. They are there to protect the propaganda, number one, and to allow for mud culture to thrive. That's all it is. It's mud culture.
Right.
And I say this all the time, like people say, well, what about BLM? I said, well, Black Lives Matter, tell that to Black folk. That's the first thing they do. If you say Black Lives Matter, tell that to black people. That's the first thing you got to start doing like that. Because for me, BLM is what I would define as an agitation army
Right.
in urban America. They are designed to agitate. So is Clantifa. Okay? They are designed to agitate.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you have these animosity agents that are in place in positions of power to basically allow that to happen. You lock people up. That's the first thing you got to start doing. If you don't lock people up, you will have a culture that is dominated with violence, that is dominated with people not respect. It's going to become nihilistic even more so.
Right.
Well,
So that's what's
life.
happening. That's what's happening out in the West Coast in California, in Oakland and LA. The crime is so bad that I'm like, do they want anarchy? Like, what is the end goal? Are they wanting to not implement any sort of law and order on purpose so that the Black community will start begging for government intervention, and then that's when they'll pounce with all of the overreach and oversight and control in the name of safety?
You just defined it. In fact, there's somebody I would love for you to meet and to bring on your show. His name is Siaka Massaquoi, and he's the first vice chair of the LA County GOP. He and I we're good brothers. He and Chris have met each other, and those are my two go-to guys in terms of understanding and learning more about the Bible. I can depend on those two to give me guidance in certain scriptures. When I start talking and getting into one of my diatribes, they were like, "You need to go read this." But Siaka Massaquoi, and I'll make sure I make the introduction for you.
Thank you.
He can tell you all about LA. He's in LA, North Hollywood. He's in the fray of it, and he's fighting the good fight as a Christian. He's a January 6er, basically. Okay. And he can tell you about how when your rights versus their rules, he experienced it firsthand. Okay. But to the point of this right here, when we talk about animosity agents that are posing as community leaders, your pastors, your Black pastors, quote unquote, can be animosity agents. Let's look at Raphael Warlock. Let's look at the other guy over there.
Jamal Bryant.
Yeah. They eviscerated Herschel Walker.
Let's talk about it.
Why? Because he doesn't think, and he doesn't act in accordance with quote unquote blackness. See, they real easy to spot. They real easy to spot because they gonna make it where you know they black and they proud.
Right.
You know, like I don't mind, and I tell them to their face like that. I'm a pretty big dude, and I pack a pretty big. You know, I got some people here that's with me on this from the A.
Oh, I know.
We have to don't allow yourself to meddle in melanated machinations. That's what it is. It's melanated machinations. That's all it is.
Okay.
And when you think about the fact of as a man and as a woman, for me, my melanin level does not have anything to do with my mannerisms, my mentality, or my manhood. And ask your husband. Ask your husband, does his melanin levels have anything to do with his mentality, his manhood, or his mannerisms?
Does it, babe? He said no.
Exactly. That's how you destroy it right there. That's how you destroy the idea of color culture and colorizing humans, because why? It has no value. If last question here. If race, and by the way, race is the biggest fallacy pretty much since 1684. And I'll go a bit into that too. But if race has a value, how do you measure it? How do you measure blackness? What's the blackometer?
Well, according to the Black community, how they measure blackness is you got to be a Democrat. You must adopt, leftist policies such as you got to be pro-choice, give women the right to just off their own offspring for any reason. You have to, I'm trying to think of some other characteristics of how they determine your level of blackness.
You have to have the attitude of the inadequate.
They have an attitude of being inadequate. However, they project an attitude of ethnic superiority. And I know that sounds like how would those two go together, but when you see it, you know it.
Rhetorical narcissism. That's all it is. Rhetorical narcissism. It's rhetoric. It's narcissistic rhetoric. It's all it is.
Narcissistic. Yeah, it's definitely that. They are the center of the universe, and everyone is out to get them on the basis of the fact that just because you're black. That's the sentiment that I got from Leonard on the Breakfast Club. Like, he even tried to tell Larry that, when you're a black person, no matter how hard you try what you do, you know, we
That's
just
that load.
can't get a shake.
That's that load. That's that load right there. That's that load right there. They get to determine that anything they determine is anti-black, they loathe it. They hate it.
Right. In the younger generations, I would say, being an academic, wanting to do well in school, wanting to speak proper, that's not, if you can't have those characteristics, because then they'll say, you're trying to be white.
Here, you want to make it easier, and I think I mentioned this to you before. I want to share you with a book again. This book right here,
Fallacy of
by
race.
L. Barrington Allen. Okay, Fallacy of Race. And he breaks down the people, the first quote unquote academics to really bring about this idea of race. Okay.
Right.
In 1684, a French scientist by Francois Bernier. Okay, he was a French scientist. He was the first person to write a paper that categorized human beings based on skin color and a few other characteristics. The first
Right.
person to do it. And it was called New Divisions of the Earth by the Different Species or Races that inhabit it. That is basically the first time in human history that somebody categorized, an academic categorized humans based on skin color. Then you have people like Charles Darwin. Darwin did not believe in God. Okay, he was basically, of the worst ilk, in my opinion.
Right.
But what most people don't realize, when he wrote the book on the origin of species, he talked about the favorite races. He was furthering this idea that because of how he looked, he was superior. Then you have his half cousin, who was Francis Galton. Francis Galton, his half cousin, is the father of eugenics. What people talk about today with Margaret Sanger, he
Right.
was the one who started it. Sir Francis Galton, he's the father of eugenics, which outlined the perfect race, or the well-born, as he outlined in eugenics. And that is what abortion is about. Abortion is population control, whether people want to believe it or not.
Absolutely.
And it's Francis Galton, the eugenicist. People like Bill Gates' father was a eugenicist. Okay? Then you look at more towards America in our history. Go look up John H. Van Avery. He wrote a book
I've never
called...
heard this name before.
Exactly. John H. Van Avery wrote a book called Negroes and the Negro Slave. This man was supposed to be a medical doctor in his era. I think it's early 1700s or something like that, or maybe mid 1800s. But he wrote a book called Negroes and the Negro Slave, where he said it was scientifically a difference that God created Aryans as superior to Negroes or Africans and Mongoloids. And he tried to give some type of medical definition of it and a medical reasoning behind it, as if it was science. And it was a masterpiece of insanity. But this is how you get to, like, these people, again, in the words that they use to create what we have now, which is the biggest fault line in our society: color. You see how that manifests itself?
Right. Yeah, I do. I see the historical progression of it. That whole idea flies in the face of a biblical worldview, because Genesis already settled, where mankind came from, how we all come from one man, and how we're all redeemed through the death of one man, the second Adam, which is Christ. I'm able to follow. I'm able to follow that. I have a question on the top of my head that I don't want to lose, and it has something. It has something to do with when you talked about, where was it? The core elements of Black culture, the idolatry, the illiteracy, and the illiteracy. But I want to talk illegitimacy. I'm sorry. I want to talk a little bit about compliance. And when I say compliance, it has something to do with something that Esquire of Sports just mentioned. He said if BLM fools black people again when they start this mask nonsense and voting fraud again in the next year and change, despite all of the truth that has come out about them, I'm virtually done. That's what sparked this question. I noticed that within the black community, there was this level of compliance that I had never seen in my life that defied common sense and documented medical research. Would you say that that level of compliance is a part of this, a lot of what you talk about here, to keep us controlled and compliant?
Well, it goes deeper than that because anything that most black people will feel injured if you go anywhere near their essence of blackness. And all these, in blackness, again, you have to be obedient and dependent on the government because, again, you have to think about what it is that they're advocating for.
Right.
Okay?
Hold on. When you say obedient and dependent on the government, I distinctly I had another guest on my show, Hollywood Morris, and he talked about how during the pandemic, how he was going around the country at ethnically melanated churches, helping them with their live streams, and how so many of these ethnically melanated pastors knew about the ineffectiveness of the masking. They saw firsthand the damage that the submuscular injectable biologic was having on people, and yet because they had to stay on code, they allowed the government to come in their churches and set up vaccine centers to inoculate all of their people. He talked about the messaging that was coming down. It was a very orchestrated process to make sure that only one message was heard. There was no, well, wait a minute, there is this medicine that you need to be asking about this. It was no, we comply. Whatever is coming down the pipeline, we need to do that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, of course. Again, I told you about how in systemic welfareism thrives on subsidizing irresponsibility. It's too responsible for them to not be compliant.
Wow.
It's too responsible for them to go against the hand that feeds them. Why do you think Democrats stay in churches when they want to campaign and they want to get everybody behind? That's what urban America is. It's the Democrat playground, and I'm here to destroy color culture, to disrupt and displace that stranglehold.
Urban America is the Democrats' playground. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it is. And when you talk about my foundation for conservative culturalism, I call it the hybrid engine of cultural change in urban America. And we're going to do it with words. We're going to beat them with words. We're not going to use Lucifer's language like that because, again, COVID was a prime example of just the complete insanity of how they were using. And let me ask you another question really quick here, by the way. Can you tell me what's the difference between colored people and people of color?
Yeah. Okay. Let me think. When I hear the term colored people, I'm referring to black folks. But when I hear people of color, that includes black folks, Latinas, Western Pacificers, anything that's other than Caucasian. I think that's how.
Basically.
Huh?
It's an expansion of the category and construct.
Yes, it expands the category to add other people groups in there.
It further divides people.
Right.
It categorizes and creates a construct. You got black folk call themselves a person of color. I have never understood the pure, and I don't want to cuss right now, but the pure freaking insanity, the pure freaking insanity of these pavement aids. Well, I'm a person of color. And it's like, Jesus Christ, man. Like somebody give this person.
Don't take the Lord name in vain. Don't do that. I know what you mean. I understand.
It will make you lose your wits about yourself on how indoctrinated these people are. And it just and how it defies description. And when you talk about COVID, these same so-called community leaders, again, they're going to protect the propaganda. They're going to provide every avenue for their masters, their handlers to come in and do what they're trying to do, with to make you more dependent on the government, to make you more obedient to the government. This is, again, and I'm not trying to put on a campaign, but Donald Trump pulled back a lot of things that the government is trying to do in terms of their policies, in the name of equality, and in the name of moving America forward, in the name of reimagining America. That should scare the heck out of every conservative Christian American there is. Ask yourself this right here. Has Joe Biden called Ice Cube back yet?
Nope. He's not going to. He told the black folks, we got to work with the Hispanics because they outpacing us soon. So, you know, we got to get in line.
And what they gonna do? Formation?
Mm-hmm. Al Sharpton with his ultra perm, he gonna do just that.
Man, that is a Hebrew heretic right there. He is excellent. Okay? He is excellent at preaching pain, selling struggle, and hustling hate. He is the best at it. He is very good. He's a Hebrew heretic. I mean,
why do you call him a Hebrew heretic?
Because where's his flock? He calls himself Reverend Al Sharpton,
and he's never pastored a church.
He is the most idolatrous person I think ever. Right. Look at what he professes and talking about. He's a reverend. How in the world can you allow this to happen in the Christian community of America?
Because he's not a Christian.
But why call yourself reverend? Because why? You making people think you are.
Well, because it lends credibility within the black community. When you are a pastor, you automatically just get elevated to a place of prominence. It doesn't matter that you don't echo and mirror what thus saith the Lord, and you're not a mouthpiece just saying what Scripture says. No. The title. Why I'm of the opinion that's why so many. Everybody's an apostle and a bishop and the first prelate of the designate percolate. I'm like, what? What are all these titles? What are y'all doing? Now you know.
That's why conservatives need to reclaim the narrative because of what you just talked about. They have hijacked, they have co-opted language. That's why they enjoy and can get fat on information dominance. Their media outlets. I call them weapons of mass deception. American WMDs. That's what they are. Think about it.
I can't keep up with all this. Do you got a glossary that's coming out? Because I'm trying to keep up with the WMDs, and I'm struggling to keep up with all of them. I'll have to watch my own replay and just pull some of these words out, because I love your use of language. It does help reorient your thinking. But my question is for those individuals out there that are going to criticize this live stream and said all you did was let that man come on your platform and just tear us down. How dare you? Like, if that's what they're gonna say. We have to be balanced enough to explore how do we actually recapture the culture. Now, it doesn't bother me when people come with that kind of criticism, because I'm like, listen, if I'm in a burning building and it's on fire, don't sit there don't rub my back, just tell me it's going to be okay. I need you to pull me out. And we can't pull people out if we don't actually define and talk about what it is that's wrong. But I do want to talk about solutions or a method to help people reclaim that language, and then how do we get that messaging into the people who need to hear it? Because the people that's on this live stream, for the most part, they would agree with a lot of what we're saying. Some of them I feel are probably a little uncomfortable because they're like, well, dang, I never really looked at it like that. And then you start re-questioning your whole life, and then it takes you down this rabbit trail. But what would you say that how do we empower ourselves to kind of reclaim this language?
Well, the first thing is you have to understand again what you're dealing with, and it's color culture. And color culture is cancerous to America. That's just the best way to put it. You don't you have to make a choice to adhere to it.
Mm,
Okay. You're born looking like your mother and father, but you die looking like your decisions. Okay. And when you make a choice, okay, stick by it. And then associate yourself with other people that have similar values,
right.
similar morals, ideals, and principles. And that's again when I talk about the foundation for conservative culturalism, I talk about how we have to have a unifying belief system and how that unifying belief system should be based on the shared attitudes, the shared principles and morals towards prayer, purpose, and prosperity.
Mm,
That's how for me, again, my personal piety, Christ, character, conservatism. That has nothing to do with colorism or with the constructs and the categories. And I live a better life because of that. That's having agency of my own thoughts and my own beliefs and my own will again.
right.
When you stop feeling like you got to be this and you got to act this way, that again it's going to be so freeing. It can be scary a little bit because some of your family going to turn against you. You're going to lose some
Yeah.
friends. You're going to be socially persecuted, and then sometimes even castigated, out of different networks or perhaps some professional opportunities or whatnot. But that's going to make you stronger, in my opinion.
Now
That's the
that
first
I
thing.
would agree with that. At least for our family, I mean we stand firm in who we are and what it is that we believe, and it did not come without a price. Um, but you feel so much. I mean, outside of being free in Jesus, I was like, "Ooh, this show does feel nice," because you start to recognize that you're not going to allow yourself, and particularly your mind, to be shackled by the opinions of others who represent moral depravity, and they
Hmm.
can't. It's not like, well, if I abandon how I think now and then go back to what they're preaching, that is actually going to yield me positive benefits. It doesn't. It's a morally bankrupt worldview. But
Mm.
I struggle because I'm like, why? How can they not see that?
Well, for me, I had to learn how to manage my life's task in an imperfect world.
Mm.
Does that make sense right there? Because
Manage
again, when you
life's
start
task.
manage your life task,
Okay.
my life task, because it's my life. I get to choose how I'm going to live in this world. I get to choose who I want to be. I get to choose what I want to do, think how
Right.
I want to think, act how I want to act. And again, when you talk about the purity of your purpose and what you're pursuing and what you're using as your guide, I'm highly favored by my Lord and Savior right there. I'm not black, I'm biblical, like I tell folk when I really want to get down with them, and they can't stop that right there. They can't stop that right there. When I
They
say that right
tried.
there, when you want to say, oh, I'm not. I'm not black, I'm biblical, bruh. Don't you can't tell me what I am. I ain't built like that. I'm
Right.
not built where I'm gonna listen to you tell me who I am. That it doesn't work like that. You got to have that kind of domineering attitude towards the naysayers.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And this is something that I think most people, when they give themselves the right to tell people and to not associate with them,
Right.
that is so liberating. Like when you invest in yourself to really produce, I would say, the results you want for yourself. And you start to carry yourself a different way,
Right.
and you have a certain type of mindset that hell would pretty much freeze over before you let somebody else tell you how to be you.
Mm.
That's the code that I live by now. I don't surrender. I don't capitulate, and I damn sure won't deviate from this idea that it's my own purity and my purpose, and again, my personal piety like that.
Right.
That's the mindset you want to have because God allows us to have that type of agency over ourselves where we can praise His name and be guided by Him, and not by these again barons of blackness or whoever or the
Mm.
liberal prayer maggots like that. No, none of that kind of stuff like that. So that's the first thing. I would say the second thing is this right here: find you a new circle that's going to align with you based again on values.
That changed the game for me. That right there. It really did.
Right.
Because it can feel very lonely because it's not you abandoning everyone else. They abandon you. And my husband and I found ourselves like that. We were like, well, I guess it's just us and we all we got. But we started attracting other like-minded individuals, and it was just so refreshing to meet these people. You do get a new circle, a new community. I mean, my faith community is everything to me. That's my church family.
Right.
But even outside of that, I found myself connecting with other people in a very deeper, more meaningful way that wasn't all wrapped up in this skin color, right?
And again, when you start to look at that, you will figure out ways to live a better life for yourself because you view yourself in a different in a higher perspective. Then again, nobody is going to have any type of agency over how you and your husband and you all's union, your dominion that you have together, right? Because for me and my wife, nobody can come in and tell me about how to be married to my wife. You crazy. I've been married 17 years, been with her for 21 years. You think, and my wife is from Gun Club Drive, off of back, okay, over, and people think her mother lives in Adamsville. I won't tell the exact, but trust me when I tell you, this
I already
one,
know.
yeah, exactly. So and it's like, okay, what we have and the growth that she is always talking about, I've gone through. Because again, when I got sober, it was me asking God to defeat me. I can tell you about the greatness of how good it is when God gets in you and you allow him again to just, you got it, God. Come on, let's go. I'm with you now. I'm not doing it like I thought I was gonna do it all these years like that right there. And I'm not
Right,
gonna reflect and be all, oh, whoa, no. I'm gonna enjoy this life thing because again, when you understand that personal piety like that, and I keep stressing that because I want every person to develop their own. Like, let me ask you a
right.
question, if you
Mhm.
don't mind. What's the most important word in your life?
The most important word?
In
You
my
mean
life, in
like
your
a
life, yeah.
collection of letters that make a word,
No, the
or
most important one word in your life that is so important to you.
Jesus?
Okay, then. Start right there. Do you see what I'm
Uh,
saying?
uh, where I'm going, he got the words of eternal life. So I'm like Peter. There's nowhere else I can be. Yes, I'm sticking with that.
And for me, it's resilience because people gonna knock us
Mm,
down, people gonna
right,
naysay, and again, for me to go through my transformation, I have to be resilient like that, and whatever is required of that, I'm ready to do it. That's the most important word in my life right now. It will change as you get again as you mature or you regress because sometimes we can't regress. Again, we are
right,
imperfect beings.
right.
And so I would say the last thing when we talk about how to destroy color culture and really, cancel it, I would tell you this right here. Ask yourself this question with regard to who you are.
Hmm.
Would you be rather colorized and categorized or respected and revered?
Respected and revered.
There you go. There you go. Do
Okay.
what it takes to be respected and revered. Because when you want to be colorized and categorized, they're gonna tell you how to act. They're gonna tell you how to think.
Mm,
They're gonna tell you what you can and can't do. But when you want to be respected and revered, it's about you, your choice design, your actions, your morals, how you live your life like that, your legacy.
right. That's what they're actually doing to our children right now in the public indoctrination system. That's literally they're trying to colorize and categorize them. And my biggest concern is that, I'm from Generation X. So
Hmm.
we know what life was like before this indoctrination. And
Hmm.
now we're seeing it. Unfortunately, you have an entire generation that this is all they are. This is all they know. This is all they're
Two.
being taught. Two
It's
generation.
two.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So you throwing the
Yeah.
millennials in?
The younger millennials who
Right, and
who
the
didn't
Gen Zs.
who got participation trophies,
Yes, you're right. You're right.
and the Gen
Yeah.
Zers and whoever else behind that. Because again, think about what they're professing in public school now, that a boy can be a girl.
Right.
Why don't we
Well,
say, okay, wait a minute? Like that, the language of that, like, think about this here. The idea of saying protect trans kids. Think about what that means right there. Because when you, first of all, again, is that adjective trans is an adjective. In
Right.
the laws of language, trans is the adjective and kids are the noun. And the
Right.
noun describes a person, place, or
Or
thing,
a
right?
thing. Right.
I think that's my English coming back 101. But
Adjective.
when you think,
Yes.
okay, but when you think about the adjective, it's a modifier to the noun. So what you're doing in essence, this is how these people think, okay? The lefticals, the architects, the
Mm,
anti-American anarchists, the people that want to see our country reimagined into what they think it is, their
mm,
rules. But when you think about trans as an adjective to the noun, which is kids, you're saying basically that you now are accepting this idea that it's okay for kids to be groomed by these pedophile groomers, by these sick people, and
right.
to normalize it and not even say it's wrong when you say
Mm-hmm.
protect trans kids, when we should be saying protect kids from trans. You see the slight subtle change in language.
It's just a reverse. All you did was reverse one word. You moved the order of that word. That's all you did,
It
and it
changes
changes.
everything.
It changes everything.
That and
Right.
why are we doing this in every school district? If you're paying taxes, you want to protect kids from trans.
Right.
Period. Just like they're hollering, protect trans kids. What made them trans? The indoctrination,
Right.
the manipulation, the grooming, all these things that we have to now capitulate to when we say when we even acknowledge trans
Right.
kids.
Or
They are
using
kids.
pronouns.
They are
Right.
kids first. There is no
Mhm.
trans woman. You a woman. You're not no cisgender, no bi. You a woman.
Right.
You had Ketanji Brown Jackson, a black woman, go into the Supreme Court hearings and sit there and say she could
You
not
can't
define a
tell.
woman. Well, she's a freaking mother.
Mhm.
What do you tell your kids?
She don't really
When
believe that.
that's my point, right? That's my point right there. The capitulation that she knows that what she has to do to be black, that right there, that right there, what you're talking about right there. And if
That's the
that doesn't
idolatry.
exactly, that's the okie doke, as we used to say here in the South. That's that okie doke right there.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So
Wow.
listen, I could do this all day long, seriously, like because I want people to get mad at me, to challenge me, to try to make me shut up. I welcome
Right.
all because you know why? I do this every day. My handle on Clubhouse is Mr. Right Minded, and I'm every kind of
Mm.
house Negro, every kind of coon there is. But when I
Wow, they
hit back,
actually call you that?
oh, when I hit back, they want to report me and say he called me like, and I called someone a jigaboo Jacobin. Okay, and they had never heard, they didn't even know what a Jacobin was, let alone a jigaboo Jacobin, and they lost their freaking mind. So when you hit back, you hit them hard. They can't take ridicule like they try to dish it out and to make you feel inferior to their idolatry.
Right.
Don't take it. Don't take it anymore.
I got you.
Don't take
So
it.
while we get ready to wrap it up, I still would like for you to provide a little bit of more clarity on the concept of collusion, victimization, and vengeful emotionalism. Can
Sure.
you talk to us about what that is and how it relates to the Black community?
So when we talk about collusion, think about how the architects have to work with the animosity agents or the community leaders or the community organizers. That's the
Right.
collusion part right there because you have to have a system, an order in the system, like, right?
Okay.
No, seriously, think about it. Like,
Tesla was trying to tell us about the system, but
yeah, that's
hers was
called
on the basis of whiteness.
exactly because again, she's colorizing because that's
Mm,
what she's been taught right there. And
right.
so when you talk about the collusion part, question everybody that's telling you about how to be you based on their rules of blackness or how you look, the hustle of how you look. That's the first of all.
Right.
Then what was the second one you mentioned?
Uh,
Collusion,
collusion, vengeful. Hold on.
vengeful
What is
emotionalism.
it? Yes,
Vengeful.
vengeful victimization and vengeful emotionalism.
So victimization, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. You've been taught that slavery held you back, redlining, the black codes, homestead, it held black folks back. And
Mm-hmm.
there's too much data that outlines how Negroes were actually able to make progress in unprecedented in an unprecedented manner in
Right.
times that where the conditions were much worse than we see now.
Right.
Again, the conditions were different. Black folk live based on constructs. Negroes live based on conditions. Okay. And
Mm.
when you talk about the victimization of it, again, that's when you want people to give you things. Can I just say my three B's? My
Yes.
three B's of black folk, the three B's. Black folks know how to bitch, beg, and blame.
That about sums it up. The
They bitch about
blaming, the begging
they
part.
beg the government for a better future, and they blame white people for everything in between.
Right.
That's that victimization right there. That's the best way to
Right.
define it. And I apologize to your audience for that right there. I mean,
Thank you. I was like, now I'm gonna have to clean this pot up, but it's the truth. But
that is the victimization where it comes from. The three
right.
B's. You know, they're gonna
Ah.
be, they're gonna beg, and they're gonna blame. Okay, and when you talk
Mm.
about that vengeful emotionalism, they're gonna always, again, because their culture was created from loathe and liberation. You're gonna have this vengeful idea of white folks, how white folks held your people down, how white folks have held us back. You are in the freest country in the history of humanity for people that are non-royalties. You live better than darn near everybody.
Right.
You got people risking life and limb, going through hell and high water. They step 1 foot on this land because they understand that if they can again on their own efforts, their own will, their own skill sets,
To get here.
and their own application of the skill sets here, that they can make something of themselves that the government is not supposed to take.
Right. They scratching through the fence, burying underneath the fence. I mean, they trying to get in.
They're trying to swim in waters that the average person should not swim in to
Right.
get in this country, right? And so when you talk about, again, that vengeful emotionalism, look at Leonard, look at Teslin. Those are perfect depictions of vengeful emotionalism. Look how they win it, Larry. Look at
Mm.
how vitriol they were. Look at their mannerisms. Look at how their faces was. They were trying to basically not only emasculate him, but to basically embarrass him. Charlemagne actually asked that man, "Do you know what it is to I think it's an N-word wake up moment
Wake up
or
moment. Yeah,
something?"
nigga wake up moment.
Yeah, that right there should tell you everything about vengeful emotionalism.
Mm. So
I tell people
basically,
all the
do you believe that when he asked Larry that question, that he was trying to imply that you ain't really black? And when what moment was it when you realized that you wasn't? Do you think that's where the line of questioning was? That was really the
no,
premise of the question.
no, I think the purpose of the question is, man, what's wrong with you? Put your end suit back on.
Oh wow, wow. So basically, because he's a conservative, he can't possibly be black. So why he won't put his Negro suit back on?
You see, it's starting to hit you a different way now, isn't it?
It is. It
And she
is.
kept saying the same thing in so many words, like, "What's wrong with you? Get on code. Put your
Right.
Negro suit back on and cut the zipper off this time.
Just keep it right, 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 right. And because he
Live in it."
wouldn't bow to that, uh it was like it would make them angry. Particularly her. He wouldn't answer the question exactly the way she felt it needed to be answered. She kept moving the goalposts. I'm talking about system. What system have we ever run? And I just, ooh, child, I can't. I'm gonna get upset just thinking
She
about it.
could not manage her misery. She was miserable doing that, right? She could not, because he would not capitulate to what she wanted him to. Can you imagine her kids being raised by her right now?
I wondered that too. So when you say unable to manage her misery, would you say that is you would apply that to like a Joy Reid or Jamel Hill or Ebony K. Williams?
I think Joy Reid is the queen of their ratchet things, just to be clear. I think,
Harvard grad.
I mean, now, and I'm gonna go here. She looks the part, basically. She looks the part too. Like, just everything about her screams a ratchet tank. And again, it's
Right.
about how you think. But Joy Reid, I'm gonna make an exception for her, because that woman right there, she's the epitome. If you okay, I'm finna go here again.
Go ahead.
If you take the sperm of stupid and impregnate the womb of idiocy, Joy Reid would be the offspring.
Dang. I'm trying. I'm trying to be charitable, but that was funny. That was funny. I'm trying to be charitable for different reasons. I see the wickedness in the heart of these people, and it's difficult for me to cozy up with wicked. But then at the same time, there is a part of me after I finish, calling them out on their foolishness. These people are lost. I mean, their minds are completely captivated by the God of this world. And so, and when you see it happening, you're just like, you can actually feel and sense the evil when it just comes out their mouth. You're just like, these people, they need Christ.
Again, wokeness, that's that woke stuff right there, what she's on. It's
Right.
it's a character's worldview that, again, it evangelizes that, that the characteristic that you were born with is going to determine who you are and how you live.
Right. I need to
And
type
that's
in the
not
chat
so hard.
because you what you're really saying is oh ratchetang instead of orangutan. It's oh ratchet. Ratchet is the root word of oh ratchetang. If that helps.
Yeah, it does,
Right.
because again, we in the urban America, the concrete jungle, as we call it,
Right.
the pavement apes and their orangutans, they're wild animals basically, because they don't again, they can't function in freedom, and they can't manage their misery, and everything about how they live is of chaos. It's menacing, it's unruly, and it's thuggish.
How I'm trying to think like a leftical. Their retort or their response would be, well, how can you expect them to be able to manage their misery? Their people were enslaved for 400 years. I'm like, 400, that math doesn't math, but okay, we'll go with
That
it.
ain't math on that one there, first of
Right, the
all.
math doesn't math. But my pushback to that is, okay, I hear you. No one is trying to say that the plight of the Black American experience in this country has not been difficult. Where we struggle and where we don't understand, where the disconnect is for me is, but you've never been a slave. How do you get angry and impacted? I mean, you can feel some sort of kind of way and say, wow, like we can have empathy for the Arab slave trade. We can have empathy for the Holocaust. We can have empathy for the Black American experience under the chattel slavery system. It was horrible. We can do that. But I'm trying to understand, why are you so connected to it as if you went through it and you wake up in a cold sweat from a dream where you remember the last time master, swatted you on the back with a whip. Like, you've never felt that before.
Loathe and liberation. That story, it absolutely goes to the idea of loathe and liberation. It's called symbolism. Sinbolism. Instead of symbolism, it's symbolism. Okay? And think about this right here when it comes to slavery. Slavery is the second worst human institution, with genocide being the first.
Right.
Slavery has been around since man has been around. And I hate when people try to say chattel slavery. Do a quick search of chattel slavery in Greek and Roman civilization. You will find it there. Chattel slavery, the word chattel slavery. Okay. So it's not just really, it's not really, primarily an American thing. No.
Right.
Slavery, okay, bondage. And for me, when I talk about American slavery, okay, American slavery was a Democrat-sponsored system of God, can I get my mind right? It's a Democrat-sponsored system of extortion. And what's the other one I always say?
I mean, it was the utilization of free labor. We could say that. And I definitely would agree that it was a Democratic sponsored system where they enslaved others who they captured them. So well, no, they didn't capture them. Others captured them. They bought them from the captors.
Here's what it is. When I look at the Democrat system of slavery, the Democrat-sponsored system of slavery in America, it was a system built on violation and also extortion. It violated their rights as a human being,
right?
Which our country was not consecrated upon, because in our Constitution, all men were created equal. And this is where I really tell people, like, to really get into the minutia of reading books. And one book that I think people should read to understand what this country did to really get rid of slavery, there's a book called Ballots for Freedom by Richard H. Sewell. Here, I'll put it up here on the screen for you.
Ballots, Ballads.
Can you see it?
Yeah. Oh, ballots. Like a vote
Ballots for
ballot.
Freedom. And
Ballots for freedom.
it talks about anti-slavery politics in our country from 1837 to 1860. And it
Right.
is a phenomenal book that talks about all the effort that people were putting forward for policy change to abolish
Right.
slavery. Okay. But when
Mm.
we talk about these different things, slavery again was economic. It wasn't race based. Because should you have to invest money to be racist? No. Do you have to invest money to be discriminatory? No. And if you understand anything about slavery, the economics, you know that it cost a lot to own a slave.
Explain.
Slavery was about economics. How in terms of antebellum South, what percent of the quote unquote white population do you think owned slaves?
It was very small. I ain't a scholar on this, but I'm going to say maybe was it around like 6%?
Right, exactly. So you had, and there's a book, another book by, it was written in 1857 by Hinton Rowan Helper. It was called The Impending Crisis of the South.
Okay.
And this man, he outlined how slavery was so bad to the Southern economic system because, the South was extremely poor unless you were a slave oligarch or a slave magnate or something to that effect. But the
Right.
majority of the Southern population was a poor population.
Right.
People don't realize that. And in this book, he outlines, why this man was quote unquote white. Okay. He didn't own slaves. In fact, the majority of the Southern white, quote unquote, land owning population did not own slaves. They couldn't afford it.
Right.
And so when you think about the fact of now, he outlines in the book how their land was so devalued because of slavery compared to those lands in the North. Okay.
Mm.
And he talked about how they were so mad about that because, again, it was impoverished. Slavery is basically serfdom. And serfdom is a component, in my opinion, of socialism.
It is.
Feudalism, basically. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about the North, they were more primarily going towards capitalism.
And right, they
Think
were
about
trying to be in enterprising and the industrial revolution. Things were being invented. Yeah, it was it was a different culture.
Exactly. And so when we talk about this idea that slavery primarily is an American institution, you had a lot of people fighting to stop slavery at every juncture. Most
Right.
people don't even realize, with in 17 with the Declaration of Independence, Vermont, I think, broke away from the New York territory,
Mm-hmm.
and they became the first republic that created policy as a republic. They weren't a state yet, but they were a republic where they outlawed slavery in some capacity. And I think that was one of the first times in human history that a republic had outlawed slavery via policy to some
Right.
extent. And when you look at, again, all the things that in terms of America trying to, again, abolish and eradicate and execute slavery, we don't get credit for that as a country.
We don't.
All they talk about is the fact of white folks enslaved roots.
Right.
Alex Haley said himself, I wanted to give a depiction of what I thought slavery would be for people today, basically, where he wanted to say, this is how we think slavery was all for everybody. Do you know how many slave manumission societies there were? How many anti-slavery societies there were
It was a
during
lot.
slavery? Multiple. So why don't we teach this history, though?
Mm. I read the firsthand account of an emancipated slave, that would be Booker T. Washington, who
Mm-hmm.
talked about when the Emancipation Proclamation came down and how excited his mom was. But after he said, literally that same day or in the matter of the weeks following, so many of the slaves were having second thought, like, well, hold on now. What are we
What we
gonna
gonna do?
do? And a lot of them had very familial, and hear what I'm saying is I don't need nobody to try to clip this up to try to make it seem like I'm trying to minimize the atrocity of slavery. What I am highlighting is how Booker T. Washington talked about the relationship that so many of the slaves had with their master and how these slaves would sit up when if the master's children, adult children, were like sick, it was an honor to take care of like the next in line. Like, just say you have a slave owner and then he has a son, and he's fighting in the war to keep slavery. The slaves willingly would sit by his bedside and nurse them back to health. And when one of them died, how emotionally impacted that these slaves were, that Master Burroughs is dead. And I'm reading this and I'm like, why would these people have this kind of level and affection for the people who owned them? But the point Booker T. Washington was trying to make was like, I mean, slavery was bad, but a lot of us did not have that experience. We actually loved our master, and a lot of our masters loved us. Some of our masters allowed some of us to buy our freedom. Some of them were incredibly harsher than others. But there's this other side of slavery that I could not reconcile. I was just like, there's no way I'm about to be boo-hooing just because my master's son died. I don't care about him. But they did.
So, let me give you an example. There's a book written by Larry Coger called Black Slave Owners of South Carolina from 1790 to 1860.
Well, that's a long time.
That's a very long time if you think about it. And by the way, I'll give you another fact. I don't know if you know or not, but in the book Black Slave Owners, Larry Coger outlines how when a lot of slaves were manumitted in South Carolina, whether it be for good service or they were manumitted because they could buy their way out of slavery,
right,
by working, different jobs, being rented out, that they would then, when they were manumitted, they would invest their money to purchase slaves because that was how they that's how they created generational wealth, because slavery was viewed upon as an investment to create generational wealth. And they did not view it. They were ambiguous to the idea that slavery was supposed to be so morally bad, in a sense. You had a lot of people do this. Now you have the left will say, well, they bought their family owners. I'm not going to dispute that, but you can't tell me that the majority of quote unquote Negro slave owners bought their family, because that's not true. No. There's no state that verifies that. And I'll give you this right here. In I think it was Carter G. Woodson, excuse me. Carter G. Woodson did a study of the 1830 U.S. Census. And what he was doing a study on was the number of Negro slave owners in America in 1830. Do you know what he found? He found that in Louisiana, in South Carolina alone, 43% of free Negroes owned slaves in South Carolina. 40% of free Negroes in Louisiana owned slaves.
That's a lot.
40% in Louisiana, 43% South Carolina of free Negroes owned slaves. And 26%, I think it was, in Mississippi and Alabama, and 20% in Georgia. So when I asked the question of, you guys are saying slavery is all about black and white, I think Bob Woodson said almost 3,500 Negroes owned slaves in America. Almost 12,000, over 12,000 owned slaves. And you telling me that it was just quote unquote a white thing? And let's not talk about Native Indians. For every 8 Native Indians, they owned a slave. Exactly.
Really?
Yeah, exactly. And when you do research on these different types of statistics, and you start to really get a different picture of it, you say, okay, wait a minute. This is not what Roots talks about. This is not what people are saying, because they understand the narrative that they give goes again to loathe and liberation. You're taught to loathe anything that is anti-black and to liberate from all things America, because they want to use that as a means to basically reimagine, or in my words, overthrow America and repurpose it as a socialist serf type nation now, serfdom type, a nation of serfdom.
Yeah, we're almost there now. I mean, with the erosion of the middle class, and it's at this point, it's class warfare, the haves and the have-nots. I mean, when gas is $4 and eggs, well, the kind of eggs I eat are $7-8, that's insane. It's unsustainable.
Do you know what the number one anti-poverty mechanism was for Negro Americans? What? Marriage.
Why is it that we're unable to get our people to see I mean, I think marriage is a beautiful institution, not because of the economic reasons, but there are some economic reasons. But explain to us why you say that marriage was, you said it was the, how did you just, how did you say it? I'm sorry.
For Negroes, marriage was the number one anti-poverty mechanism. There's a
Ah.
book, Marvin Olasky. He wrote a book called. He wrote this book called "The Tragedy of American Compassion."
Mm-hmm.
Can you see that?
Yes.
By Marvin Olasky, and it outlines how a number of different, as far as like trying to live within their means, how getting married you could have a more stable infrastructure
Right.
because the wife would be able to stay home and take care of the kids if they
Mm.
had children, or if sometimes there was two incomes coming to the house as opposed to just one. Think about how hard it is and expensive it is for a single quote unquote black mother to raise children.
It's real rough.
So why is it that, and this is where people get mad when I bring up a Kevin Samuel style, why is that 80% of quote unquote black women initiate divorce?
Now that I don't understand. I am still trying to. Well, I'm playing. I have a video queued up on that I plan to release next week, or I might do it
Okay.
tomorrow. That is very concerning. That 80% of our marriages, the initiation is done by the woman. Like every man that I know, the wife broke up the home, and it wasn't for. I mean, these are people. These are guys that I know. I'm like, he wasn't beating you. Like he not out. Like you not happy. It's this infatuation with happy, which I
So
don't understand. But
you finna get mad at me now. So who basically in the 60s, when they paid women to go ahead and do all this having indiscriminate sex and having these kids to get welfare,
okay. Mhm.
who volunteered? Who accepted the terms?
Black women,
Now, black men, I don't give them a pass at all because when you create a culture where the men lack, penis discipline,
hmm.
for lack of
I
a
know
better
what you
term,
mean.
and the women,
Sexual restraint.
and there's a high level of vaginal corruption amongst the women. Okay, you got to think to
Mm,
yourself, what do you think is going to happen as far as like that culture?
right. It's gonna
Because
destroy itself.
exactly, you're going to have poor parenting skills. Number one, again, you're going to have that fratricide, that nihilism. You're going to have all those things that again it strives in systemic welfarism. It is something that, and this is why I go so hard with the language, because if you understand everything that has been done and you see the results of these things, you and your husband, you know for a fact you all are a union, right? My wife and I as well. I'd rather have two people working towards the same goal to live a better quality of life than just be one.
Right.
That's just me. And I think marriage is one of the greatest institutions that we have. When you can
It
find
is.
someone that you really that you is your partner and
Right.
your life partner, that you can have your own unique world within a world, in a sense, right?
Right.
And so when you talk about these different things, black culture does not allow for that anymore.
Okay.
What does Big Mama teach her daughters? You don't need a man. Go ahead and get your get your education, girl. All these different things,
Big Mama
and
out
it's
here telling her to put some money to the side because you can't depend on him, and yeah, Big Mama got some real destructive toxicity. That's
Big Mama was a bottom B. Big Mama was a bottom B. Seriously, Big Mama was. She has taught these women that bottom B mentality, and it is infected a lot of different urban inner cities. And what we see every day with mud culture. I'm not being facetious at all when I say this.
right.
I live in it. You can't go in my city right now downtown and feel like you felt 25 years ago.
Oh no, that's not the city I fell in love with. Like
Exactly.
this city represented like the just a lamp on a hill when I got here, coming from the streets of New York City. I had never come to a city and seen so many Negro
Black
Americans
folk,
that were
black
right, that were just prosperous, own their own business, own their own homes, just they seemed happy. I was like, oh, I want that. I want that. It was
So how do we get
beautiful.
here then? How do we get right here then? Because that which I grew up in was not actually black culture. That was American culture. When you
It
have people
was.
that understand working every day. My mother worked. My mother, she was a school teacher. When
Mm-hmm.
you have people that understand capitalism in a better facet, that you don't sit around and wait for somebody to give you something.
Right.
You're self-reliant. You have self-interest. You understand self-advancement, prayer, purpose, prosperity. It goes hand in hand.
It
We
does.
don't have that anymore.
We don't. We don't. I have
I don't
a
get
no. You did. I was just saying 'cause I have a lot of male colleagues and friends that they want marriage, but they don't see any sort of redeeming eligible qualities within the community that look like them, that they're like, I can't build with that. I mean, it's just like, what do you want me to do with this? Yeah, and I don't have an answer because I'm on this side of the fight, trying to fight against the culture and telling women, listen, sis, don't thirst trap on the social media. Like, no, don't do that. Like, you somebody's mama. Come on now, sis, put some clothes on, or they don't listen to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm not saying it right, but I am concerned about those things. I'm concerned about the lack of respect for men within the black culture. It's almost like men are just disposable, or
that's
only useful as a resource. That's very concerning to me.
it's it's a matriarchal cesspool if you think about what we are now right now in Atlanta.
Yeah, it's bad. A
It's that
matriarchal
bad.
cesspool. You want to hear how bad the matriarchal cesspool is? Are you familiar with the Nextdoor app? The
Oh, my wife
neighborhood.
said, yeah, yeah.
So on that app, I got insomnia. I don't sleep these days. A neighbor posted a video of a mom, like a whole grown mother, who came outside with a firearm and her 18-year-old daughter and her 20-year-old son to go beat up a 14-year-old girl. I'm like, I'm the mother, and she's the ringleader. This is the mama, and I'm like, there's no hope when that is the prevailing visual optic that you see. What do you do with
It's
that?
mud culture. It's mud culture is wrought. It's wrought with moral squalor, barbaric behavior, and sanctioned savagery.
I'm you gonna have to slow down. We black and slow
Okay.
over here. Moral squalor.
Mm-hmm.
What was the
Barbaric
other?
behavior.
Barbaric behavior.
You just outlined it.
Right.
And sanctioned savagery.
Sanctioned savagery. It's funny that you say that because that's actually a word that people are applying to themselves now. Like, I'm a savage. I'm like, really? That's you want to be that on purpose? It's almost like it's the cool thing to say, to talk about how savage you really are. Like, they're trying to out savage one another. Um, I've seen that. I mean, listen, I just moved out of DeKalb County, so I'm the savage. So the story that I just told you about, that literally happened right in DeKalb County, less than 8-10 miles away from here, just in a subdivision, not on the water line. So that wasn't in a city. I'm like, we out here in the suburbs, and you out here with a firearm. You somebody's mama to go beat up and fight a 14-year-old.
Oh yeah.
What is wrong with you?
Do you? Why do you think I said it's moral squalor, it's barbaric behavior, and it's sanctioned savagery.
Right.
I don't apply things that to describe something. I have to think about it, and then when I
Right.
think about it, I have to look at the words I'm using, and I have to agree with my description of it. And it's the best
Right.
thing I've learned how to do, because when you can describe things in what I call weekend language, again,
Mhm.
words that you can that absolutely give you a different, it hit differently when you
Right.
describe it like that.
It does.
Does it not?
It does.
That's the language we should be using in.
I agree. So what do you say to the segment of the community that says, I hear what you're saying, but this is just so negative. Like, this is so negative for us to, be speaking of our people in this way, and to be describing the our young scholars of the next generation in such just debased communicative styles. What do you say to them? Because I be wanting to punch them in the face. Like, seriously, you want to lecture me about speaking the truth about what is anyone? Ray Charles can see it. I mean, what do you say when they're like, you hate yourself, you're self-loathing, you don't love black people, you just want to sit up in you're on your soapbox and just talk about all that's wrong with us. What do white people do? Ah, that's basically what I'm speaking. I'm speaking for that ignorant aspect of the community. But what do white people do? Since we're so bad, what do they do?
So I would say this here. First of all, I would ask them, are they stuck on stupid or something like that?
Mm,
Because when they make those asinine assertions like that, that tells me exactly where they are. And again, it goes back to this idea of them being a pavement ape or an orangutan. They can't function in freedom, or they can't manage their misery. But I would ask, and I would say to them, like, why do you hate yourself and try to bring
mm,
me into? Don't
right.
depend on me to help you love yourself better. That's not how life works.
No.
You have ambushed your own ambition with animosity. Your animosity has ambushed your own ambition, basically.
Mm,
You know what I mean? You were a slave to your own self-hatred.
right.
Think about it, because you're trying to tell me that I have to, that because I think a certain way that does not even remotely accept, let alone acknowledge anymore, that that cancerous way of viewing myself or the world or my fellow humanity. The goodness of God will always outweigh color culture all day, every day.
Amen.
If you don't understand that right there, then again, it's not up to me to help you love yourself better. You
Right.
didn't create yourself. You didn't born
Mm,
yourself into this world. You didn't implant yourself in this world. God brought you in this bad boy. He gonna take you out when it's time.
right.
That's what I would say to them like that. And if they really want to, kind of get again in my face, I would tell them, look, go talk to your mama if you can still. And if she's no longer here, and your dad, if they no longer here, go to their gravesite and ask them, how did I get this way? Is it y'all fault? Because you need to blame them before you blame me. They brought you into this world. I didn't.
Right.
Like
So
I,
basically,
I,
who
I cut them
raised
hard.
you?
Yeah, who did this to you? Because if you won't look in the mirror, then you need to go find somebody else to blame like that. But it won't be me.
Right.
Or
How?
or go with God.
Right. I
Go with
got you.
God.
Last question.
Okay.
How do you get members of the black community to divorce themselves from the culture? I was talking to another female black conservative of mine, and we were just trying to, try to make sense of things. Obviously, we know that there's a spiritual component to it, but we're literally we realized we were like, so many of our people are still married to the culture, and they can't pull themselves away from it. Um, how do you get them? My answer is, or at least let me give you my answer, and I'll let you give yours.
Okay.
I am wholly committed to sharing the gospel, which is when I think of Romans 1:16, where it says, for I'm not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God unto salvation for everyone who believes, to the Jew first and the Greek. So literally, Apostle Paul is saying that the good news of redemption from this position that you're in, this moral debasement, this victimization culture, this vengeful emotionalism that you're experiencing, it's available to the white supremacists and the black supremacists, right? I only know how to run to the cross because I realized just how wretched and sinful and wicked that I was if left to myself. And so I personally, I want to spend a lot of time. I want to talk about these things. I think these things are important, but I also think it's important for us to tell people that their greatest need is not getting back at white folks, not getting, restitution and getting some money from the white system that you claim is oppressing you so much, but that dying in your sin and succumbing to the moral depravity that has you bound, your greatest need is to be saved from that. Because it wasn't until I saw the gospel and the beauty that's Christ, of how he is literally laying down his life for people that don't deserve it. There's no good in it, any of us, but yet he died for us, purchased us with his blood. It was that message that gripped me, that made me see the world in a different light. And I was like, wait a minute. Why do I hold partiality in my heart? That person didn't do anything to me. Like, why am I looking at them this way or holding these preconceived notions? This is why I can stand victorious over the sin of partiality. And like I did on the other day, I went and celebrated with my sister in the Lord who came here from communist China. She came from China, a professing Christian, moves here, marries an American man, and she received her citizenship the other day. And I got to witness and celebrate that with her. I would have never done anything like that if I was still stuck on being pro-blackity black all the time because it's my people. Like, that sister, Li Xing, that's my people. Because our unity is in Christ, and it had nothing to do with skin color. So that's my way of speaking to these cultural issues, and kind of, yes, we're going to put all our dirty laundry out there and we're going to wave it for everybody to see. But at the end of the day, I can't leave my people bankrupt. I got to give them the only solution that I know that helped me. You see what I'm saying? But I'm curious, and I'm sure you would echo that too. In the practical, that is my spiritual remedy. But there are some practical things that I believe we can do too, not in place of. But I want to know what you think those practical things are.
I think the first thing, and I love, how you outline it, because, and let me just say to you right now, what you just talked about was your ability to not only manage your misery, but to basically it just put it up in a box. You're not even, you're devoid of that type of misery that comes with, again, the constructs and the categorizations of that.
That's that freedom in Christ.
that's and you absolutely know how to function in freedom. That's the beauty of it.
Man.
You know how to function in freedom, and this is why it hits differently. It's so simple, but yet people make it so complex. Okay, so the first thing I would say is, really kind of like, I would encourage people to learn to ground themselves in the principles of goodness.
Right.
And if you want to understand the principles of goodness, go pick up that book or go talk to somebody who understands that book.
You preaching. It is, because the principles of goodness, Jesus is the embodiment of all that is good. No one is good but God, and Jesus is God. So he is our example of goodness. I like that.
Okay.
But and because for me to be theologically consistent, understanding that salvation is of the Lord, I can't wish. So I can pray that the Lord opens the minds of the Black community. I would love for there to be a 21st century revivalistic movement where something just supernaturally happens through the proclamation of the gospel, that Black people shed this vengeful victimization, woe is me, and it's the white man. I would love for that to happen. Who knows? It's not impossible. But for me to be theologically consistent, I have to lead with the gospel first, highlight these issues, definitely, but I have to lead with what you told me on the phone. Christ, it was the three C's: character, right? And conservatism. So the Christ, leading Christ, is going to reform and change my character, which flows from who I am at my core. And then the conservatism flows from my biblical worldview. But the genesis of it all is Christ first. And I'm just so concerned. So many of our people are caught up in African spiritualism and Black Hebrew Israelism and all these other isms. They out here worshiping trees and praying to dead ancestors. I'm like, ooh, child. Mm-mm.
You know what's funny? Watching you kind of come to your own answers as you're going through and you're explaining things. You're like in your mind. I know that little voice is like, "Girl, you get it. You get it.
It's yeah, like, right. It's happening in real time."
Exactly. And what you just when I say personal piety, I'll view it another way. You have a belief system now,
right?
And your belief system as an individual is completely opposite. It's a paradigm shift. It's a pivot, in other words, away from the Negro boarding with the Negro juice.
I don't want no Negro juice. Y'all keep that.
Exactly. So
good.
The Black community would never do that right there, but the individual can. The Black community will never do what you're talking about because the Black community, in a sense, is a fallacy. How again? Let's recap. How can if you've already agreed with me that your skin color does not constitute your character, intellect, or will, or your essence or your worth as April, the individual, the human.
Right.
So how can it be the foundation for culture? Color is not a cohesive for culture. It's not. And it's not a component of community building. It's not. And that's been proven. It can't be. So why do we keep trying to make the Black community, quote unquote, wake up or come together? I'm not coming together with them folk like that who had hit a butt culture. You done lost your mind. I'm not doing that.
I'm laughing because I'm listening to you, and then I got the peanut gallery over here saying the same thing you saying. I can't focus.
Like I'm then let them fools do what they do. They cannot function in freedom or manage their misery. I am not a pavement ape. Not.
At one point, I wasn't a ratchet tang at one point, but I was holding on to a lot of anger. And I'm from the hood. Listen, the only way we know how to settle stuff is like, okay, now I gotta kick you in the chest. Like we speak one language: compliance or violence.
The hood is cultural. It's not geographical.
You're right.
You know what I mean? That's the best way to put it. So, and I would stress this point again: learn to ground yourself in the principles of goodness. Number one, and it only takes a simple task. Make the first step. Either pick up the Bible or go ask somebody. Hey, can you tell me about this right here? Now, I will give a caveat to that. Anybody that colorizes Scripture or that colorizes the Bible, look them in their eyes and say, "Not today." I'll holler at you. I'm gonna chuck up my deuces. I'm out. I'm trying to get away from what you're talking about.
Right.
Whether it's your mama, your daddy, your brother, your sister, your cousin, them, or like our boy Chris said, your cousin, them.
Right.
Okay? Because again, these barons and baronesses of blackness, they everywhere. They everywhere. Everywhere. That's the first one again. But the second one, I would say, really kind of come to the staunch conclusion that color does not equate to your condition. It does not. It doesn't equal your condition. And you really got to kind of give yourself an opportunity to live life based on your own rules. Does that make sense?
I got it. I see what you're saying.
The third one I would say is really, and I'm reading my notes here because every question that you have, I have notes for this kind of stuff. I would say, don't constrain your character to really capitulate to the constructs of color culture. Don't
Mm.
constrain your character to capitulate. You know what I mean? Don't do
Just
that right there.
unleash it.
You were born. You were given. You were. I say this in my bio on Clubhouse. God is the genesis of life, and family is the genesis of America. And if you understand those two things, again, you give yourself an idea of what goodness is all about.
Right. I'm
Right?
always
And also,
talking about. Sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Please go ahead.
I was gonna
Please
say, I'm
go
always
ahead.
talking about how healthy societies are comprised of healthy communities, and healthy communities are made up of healthy families. And so, if the family is broken, I mean, the idea of reimagining families, I I struggle for even to understand how even unbelievers could think that that is gonna work.
Mm-hmm.
These new reimagined families, well, two mommies or two daddies, or just a mama. They don't really, they very rarely do they advocate for just a daddy. It's usually just a mama or two mamas and two daddies. So that tells me that there is an assault on manhood at an
Mm-hmm.
unprecedented level, because you really don't hear any sort of advocacy for we need to make single dads great, or we need to support single dads. You don't hear that at
Wake that
all.
up. Wake that up. Because now they're gonna start talking bad about you when you say stuff like that right there.
I
Because
don't
what
care.
you're talking about, what
I
you're
don't
talking.
care.
Let me tell you something, and your husband will feel me on this right here. But masculinity, that's God's guidance to protect the family.
Come on. Listen, when this man, he was gone for less than 24 hours, I was like, listen, I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe. I know we got an alarm, but I can't
Is
sleep.
he smiling right now?
He don't smile. He just,
Okay,
he's
but
listening.
he knows
But
what I'm
he
talking
know,
about.
like, he just went to South Carolina. Like, it was 3 hours away and turned right back around. And I'm not the needy type, right? Like, he knows. It's not like I'm just like, oh, I just need. It's not that. It was literally like, oh my God, he really ain't here.
Right,
How I'm supposed to sleep? And he just
right,
sat over here and said, he was like, I was watching the cameras. Right. It,
right.
it protects the family. My daughter, literally, she has been doing this since she could walk. Every time that man puts that key in the door, she is at that door greeting him, because it's like, ah, dad is home now. Now that she's older, she goes out she don't even wait for him to put the key in the door. When she see him pull up, she goes to the end of the driveway, grabs his bag, and brings it in, because she's just like, yay, like he is here now. That is
Mm-hmm.
the foundation of family. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have that growing up, so I'm looking
Neither did
at
I.
it like
Neither did I.
it's beautiful. I love to see it, but I have no memory of that. It's not even a knee jerk reaction for me to do that. And I'm like, that is so problematic.
Isn't that a beautiful thing though? When you just sit back and you share with somebody else the blessings that God has bestowed upon you in your home, and that
Amen.
what your everyday experiences
It's
in that home of yours. That is the genesis of that's family right there.
It is.
And we've gotten away, like, okay, in Black culture, what's the definition of family now?
The community, the
Illegitimate,
village, illegitimacy.
yep, illiteracy and idolatry.
Yeah.
Because again, that those things are what you see that's most prevalent. How do you have a single parent rate, a single home parent, single parent home rate like that in that culture? I think Larry Elder outlined, I think it was 25% for quote unquote white culture, right?
Right.
So when you think about that, the majority of children in Black culture don't have what you have and your children have, with both of you two in the home.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Like, and these are things that, in terms of consistency, growing up, that is gonna have a major impact in the culture itself. In American culture, like I said, God is the genesis of life, and family is the
Family.
genesis of America. Okay,
It is.
and I think the last one here that I would say, which really will kind of piss people off a little bit, but I don't really care. Anger and fear can be defeated by gratitude. That anger and fear,
Listen.
that anger and fear that you have because you've been Negro boarded with Negro juice, and you had the Negro suit on, and when you finally, when you figure out where that zipper is, you take it off, and you become sober off the Negro juice like that right there. That
Right.
anger and fear can be defeated by gratitude, and by gratitude, in terms of what God has granted you, and
Right.
that is life. Still, when you wake up every day, you didn't wake yourself up.
No.
Come on, be grateful. Gratitude is a very powerful dynamic in ways that I cannot explain. I seriously, and I've tried to, but I'm just so darn grateful because
Mm.
again, when I asked God to defeat me, to get rid of the vices in me with alcohol and like cocaine abuse and stuff like that, He did. What I
Amen.
couldn't do since college, He did. Literally, over. I went cold turkey from July 6th, 2018. It was my last time I ever had a drink or took a bump of cocaine, and it was like nothing. I have no desire for it, and I tell people I don't put the pressure of sobriety on. I just say not today.
Right.
Simple as that. Not today.
That's an
So
amazing
that's
story.
listen. Grace of God. You telling me that this skin color of mine has something to do with all that? Come on, man. No. I mean, like, you have to be honest with yourself at some point when it comes to the idea of blackness and race. Race is a fallacy, full stop. In fact, if you want to even be more technical about it, go look up European ethnocentrism and the concept of othering. And when you combine those two, that is the foundation for race right there. And it's both a fallacy. They're both fallacies. So
So
we
we
can
all
really
just
get to,
walking around here speaking lies and using
oh,
Lucifer's language.
there you go. There you go.
Wow.
I absolutely love this conversation because this, a lot of people will get mad at me. In my family, you want to see a dude mess up the family reunion or mess up Thanksgiving for the last about 3 years. My mother has just been like on a warpath with me when it comes to me kind of giving folk the business. But I've turned about maybe 4 of my family members onto this, and I've turned so
Right.
many other people onto this ideology of mine and my belief system and my philosophy that they have all been like, you know what? You need to do more. You need to write a book. You need to do certain things because it gives them like a sense of support that they can go out and battle against,
Right.
again, just that the beast of blackness or whatnot like that. And they understand, like, and I would tell people to pick up a Bible and just start reading things, but then
Mhm.
go to someone to kind of give you a bit of guidance because the Bible for me was hard to understand because when you're trying to read things but you don't understand how to comprehend the Bible, you need a little help, and that's where that support system can come in at right there,
Right.
and that's
It's
that's what Chris
definitely
Harris.
right. Well, he's a wonderful person to provide that level of discipleship. Chris is very
Mhm.
very sound. He and we've been met him on Facebook. We missed you
Right,
at his birthday. You should have been there, but I heard you were out of town.
I
So it's
was.
fine. We gonna let you slide on that. But I have thoroughly enjoyed this sit down. I think that it was so beneficial for someone to hear. I don't hide my conservatism on my channel. I'm very vocal about that. But
Right.
explain people, I'm like, I didn't arrive at this for political reasons. I arrived to this worldview because it flowed from me being a new creation in Christ. And just like you said, reading the Bible, I was like, oh, this is incompatible. I was like, I can't be pro choice anymore. That's not going to work. How do I read these black letters on these white pages to speak of, I'm not trying to put it in ethnic terms, but I was like, these are not congruent worldviews. Something has to give. And for me, it was very, very easy to shed the vestiges of all that vengeful emotionalism and the
Hmm.
victimization. It just
Hmm.
kind of just went away. So I'm hoping to enlighten other individuals who listen to me and then expose them to individuals like yourself so that they can hear, like, we all have to repent, and we're all guilty of doing a lot of the things that you said. And the last thing we don't want to do is succumb to this mutt culture. We need to call out the barons of blackness by name. And I'm trying to think of all the new words that I learned. It's a lot of them. The idolatry, the illiteracy, and the illegitimacy that is plaguing our community. We have to talk about it more, because we won't be able to move forward till we at least understand and properly diagnose what is the problem. But I'm so
Let me ask you a question. What makes it your community?
There I go again. I'm drowning in Negro juice. Oh, I don't know. Listen.
You've been taught to basically accept that, because your community to me is in Christ.
It is, isn't it? And I say that. I say that all the time. Okay, so let's meet me halfway. How about when I just refer to them as my kinsmen according to the flesh? Kind of like the Apostle Paul. That's how he referred to his Jewish, his ethnic Jewish heritage. He would refer to them, those are my kinsmen according to the flesh. You know, I got my family in Christ, but this existential brown skin that I'm trapped in, I am burdened for my kinsmen according to the flesh. Can I hijack that biblical language and use that?
I would just simply say your cousin them. Like
my cousin and them.
Your cousin them. You know what I mean? Like, because again, I'm not saying I am any better than anybody. I'm not.
No, I
have a right not to associate myself with that anymore.
Right.
Again, one of my core rules now is to never colorize anyone anymore, because I the conditions of humanity I respect too much to colorize humanity.
Right. I'm gonna go on a colorization detox. I'm gonna try for 30 days. Okay. I will try not to refer to the white community or the black community in terms of the color. I figure out how I'm gonna do this, but I'm gonna try. I'm committed to trying. You called the prairie maggots in the
prairie maggots.
Liberal prairie maggots,
progressive prairie maggots. And well, there's a term that I think Richard Wright wrote in one of his books called Negrotarians, as he called them, as he defined them as Negrotarians, where they have a complex where they feel like they have to always be the God savior for Negroes.
So those are your liberal prairie maggots are Negrotarians.
Mm-hmm. And I got a bunch of names for them too, but I don't want to, especially the ones that want to tell you how you have to act based on how you look. When they say, what's wrong with you? You know how the ones that be on TV, and when they say certain things that you're not, that you're not supposed to be thinking this way because of how you look. They look at this. This is something that I need people to understand. They look at black people as a black culture or the black community as a special needs community.
Right. I'm like, what? I hate that. I'm like, I am not some juvenile, helpless, invalid. But they do talk about us like we're some special needs community. I'm guilty of using that language, saying, well, I understand that the black community, we've got unique needs and unique challenges. Like I've said that.
So again, if we work on not using their language, Lucifer's language, it will make a tremendous difference in how you view your fellow man and your fellow woman, how you view humanity like that.
Right.
Like you will stop your own biases because you don't realize you're doing it.
You're right.
At least that's what I've learned. At least, and I try to. That's why I listen better to people when they talk, because I can say, "Oh, well, that individual's crazy," not, and it's not based on how he look. It's based on what's coming out of his mouth. It's based on his actions. Like
you sound crazy.
Yeah, you stuck on stupid. You know what I mean? Like that's the part to where When you start to listen to people and stuff like that, you realize when they be coming with some of this crazy stuff that they talk about with regard to being black and all these other kind of quote unquote, skin traders. That's another one I'll tell you about later on. But like, you realize people live within so many constructs and so many boxes they want to put you in, so
Right.
they can just basically tell you what they think you are.
I'm
That is
sorry.
such a degradation, against
I
humanity.
I cannot let you go without you talking about the skin traders. When you told me that on the phone, I was like, that's it. I gotta bring him on. I wrote it down. And you I think you referred to like Roland Martin and
Oh yeah.
like Michael Eric Dyson as skin traders.
Mhm.
Can you define that for the audience before I let you go? And
So
everyone is urging you to get this book written, sir.
sure.
You write a book.
So think about the slave traders, in those African nations, how they would,
Mm-hmm.
and those that would go out and enslave other tribes
Right.
and sell them, right, and make money off of them by selling them to those other those pirates and those slave traders within basically the transatlantic slave trade and the trans-Saharan slave trade, basically.
Right.
Well, it's the same thing now, but you're not basically enslaving them in terms of based on their labor. You're enslaving them in terms of based on the constructs and their mentality now. So
Mm.
they trade in your mentality as opposed to your labor. Skin trading, because if you think and if you do these things because of any ideals of blackness or whatnot, you become some people call it a race pimp or a poverty pimp, but I call them skin traders because again, they're doing everything they can to make money off of you and how you think and feel and behave based on your skin color. Skin
Skin
trading.
trade. That's good. Did y'all catch that? The definition of what the skin trader is? So how he would consider someone like a Roland Martin or a Rashad
Facts.
Rishi or
Facts.
Al Sharpton or
Al
the
Sharpton. Al
ambulance
Sharpton's the most.
chaser Ben Crump.
Oh, Ben, like those guys, and again, does the words not really describe them in terms of what they represent though? Because again, they always about black stuff, white stuff.
Mm,
They're always about that right there. And then they're the first ones to try to call people out who are conservative Republicans, say, look at these tokens, look at these Uncle Toms. And like I said, I'm here to give you a vocabulary you ain't never really heard before like that. Because again, I can go with the best of them like that because I'm going to describe who they are, not because of
right.
how they look, because of what they represent and lack
Mm,
thereof. So I would say that's again, give yourself that opportunity to live based on your own rules again. And for me, that personal piety, it's a differentiator. You can figure it out on your own what your core belief system is built around.
right.
And once you do that and you give yourself the opportunity to live based on that, you'll become better as a person, as an individual.
I agree. Well, this has been a riveting discussion. One of my moderators, Susie Q, she kind of just joined us. She was a little late, and she says she's gonna watch the replay. So thankful for you popping in and just saying hi, Susie Q. That's one of my other sisters from. We have different mamas, but the same daddy, and I love her very, very dearly. She's so faithful and shows up on my channel. So, um, with your organization, individuals want to learn more about it. And am I correct in saying that you're still in the early development stages of it?
I am
Um,
actually, and thank you for kind of giving me a chance to talk about it. I'm in the process of getting my board together because I'm going to be a nonprofit. I don't
okay.
want this to be, in a sense, I want it to be the first urban conservative think tank that really is
Ah,
devoted to things of what we discussed today. And again, I want the foundation for conservative culturalism to be the hybrid engine of cultural change in urban America. So, and I've been talking to Chris; he's already agreed to be part of the board. And I have another colleague, but you may be getting a phone call from me yourself because I want to be diversified in this thing. Because I do think that we have to be, at some point, we have to go on the offensive and how to
right,
stop what we've seen going on with the civil rights operation of the 60s. We need to have, again, a new perspective that is,
right.
again, for me, gratitude is going to be one of the best things I talk about. Be grateful that you're in a country. Be grateful that you are in a state of mind again where you can live a good life. You can inherit American prosperity. And I want to tell you something personally that I hope you will accept this. You need to understand that your decisions you've made, there's privilege to that. It truly is. There's a lot of privilege to the good decisions you've made, you and your husband have made, and you guys know what I'm talking about. Privilege comes with making good decisions. Most people don't realize that. They want to talk about privilege as far as like a monetary thing, but no, privilege comes with making good decisions.
That's deep. Because
So I
so
want to
many. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I want to commend you on this because what you're doing in the voice, and you expanded that share of voice that you see that there was a deficit in.
Right.
That's a good decision right there. And look at the privilege that you have to engage people on terms that are not basically of anything of a non-biblical foundation anymore. That's privilege right there. And you can make money as a result of that, but the money is not the privilege. The privilege is again the gratitude and everything else that comes with that, with the work that you're doing. So I want to commend you on that. Just understand that privilege, you have a privileged lifestyle.
Thank
Exactly.
you. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. And sometimes it takes an outside person to remind you of things like that, but you don't want to take any sort of privilege for granted. Because had it not been for the grace of God, you listen, okay, the testimony. Everybody got a testimony, so we know that it's because of the grace of God and Him being merciful to these we are wretches undone. He was just very, very merciful to us. So I'm just glad that I managed to get you on the show. It didn't take months out. I'm gonna get Chris on as well. Eventually I might do a panel of just, I want to highlight the pillars of the Negro Americans that are coming with a message that is not like what we're used to hearing. I want, I never use the term African American, but Black American masculinity, white American masculinity, y'all both are under attack. I want to highlight that and I want to expose it to more people. More of us, particularly as women, we need to hear man speak. Unfiltered, well, kind of filtered, just leave the profanity out, but men, we need to hear what are on the minds and the thoughts of American men of all stripes, because I think it will help give us a better perspective, and it will help at least my female listeners to have a greater appreciation and to just level up in the respect area as it relates to masculinity in this country, because it is under attack. And women's sports is under attack. But I mean, I ain't never been a fan of women's sports anyway. But I am more concerned about highlighting masculinity, because when the man is gone, the society, we won't be good. I can't live in a society of weak men. That's scary to me.
I'll give you this right here too, and I'm going to do more on this, but I've been really going back throughout history and looking at the purposeful patriarchy in different civilizations, and how when you build society around a more purposeful patriarchy,
Right.
that to me is what we're missing in urban America. That purposeful patriarchy, number one. And one of the things that I think is a core component of that purposeful patriarchy is masculine exceptionalism. Like you hear people say now, toxic masculinity. Well, what's the alternative to that? And in my mind, it's masculine exceptionalism. It's men being responsible, accountable, disciplined, knowledgeable, driven, committed, assertive, and resilient.
I can't write all that. I'm trying to keep up because I feel like I'm in school. My hand is cramping. I have to. I want to transcribe certain aspects of this show and maybe turn it into a blog post. You should literally consider writing a lot of these thoughts down and
Already written down.
getting published on some blogs. Listen, we need to hear this. I talk to Chris all the time, and he's always, breaking things down to me. But the way you use the English language and formulate this value system using words, it's amazing. It is truly amazing, and it needs to be codified in a book.
Okay. I'll tell you what then, because I actually put together a framework called Urban Character Politics. And it's a paradigm shift away from identity politics. And it's designed to help conservatives and Republicans engage and energize urban Americans and not to get away from the idea of colorizing them. I think I shared with you my 5 archetypes. But what I'll do is I'll email you the PowerPoint. And what we can do when you get some time one day, I'll walk you through it because it goes into so much detail, again, about the philosophy, the psychology, and the strategy of really going in and, again, improving urban America from the foundation, from the viewpoint, rather, of character alignment as opposed to categorization and constructs.
I like that. Character
So that
alignment.
I promise you that I will do that for you and share that with you. And the last thing I would say is this right here: choose Christ over color, country over constructs, and character over complexion.
Listen, that's a mic drop moment right there. So I am grateful for you and the time that we've had together. I'm gonna tune in and test the temperature of the listening audience that has still managed to stick around and hang with us as long as we've had. I will send you a follow-up email, or I got your number. I know how to reach you. Thank you so much for your time tonight. You will not be a stranger to the Standard of Truth podcast because there's so much more that we need to discuss and talk about. I didn't get to really talk about capitalism as much as I wanted to. And I just think you are a great voice to lend to that conversation. So will you agree to come back?
1,000%.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Jordan. You guys, this is my new homie, kinsman according to the flesh, Jerod Jordan. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
I enjoyed myself, and thank you for having me.
Awesome. Have a good evening.
You too.
All right, you guys. So I know this was long. We're about 3 hours in. I have no idea how I'm going to repurpose and chop up this discussion because there were just so many good moments that every time I was like, okay, I think I have a moment that I can chop out. He was hitting me with another good moment. So I'm so grateful for everyone who stuck around, all 45 of you guys. I don't take it for granted. You could be doing anything else on your Friday evening. Many of you are off tomorrow. You could be doing anything else, but you are here with the Standard of Truth podcast. I'm curious to know you guys' thoughts and feedback about this discussion. I know it was a little unorthodox for me. My goal is to lend this platform to a myriad of voices with the sole understanding that I lead with my biblical worldview, that the gospel will be magnified, preached, and proclaimed. However, while we're living in this world, in this flesh, right, there's some just real issues that need to be discussed. And I'm not naive enough to be like, well, let's just spiritualize it and explain it away. No, like we have to have a conversation about these issues. We need to highlight them, call them what they are. I think it's a multifaceted approach. I just want to have the conversation. So I wanted to step outside of my comfort zone and bring someone that you're not used to hearing from. You're going to hear from him again, definitely. But I want to know, what did you guys think? Do you have any feedback for this show? The good, the bad? I want to hear it all. I'm sure many of you will leave me comments after the show ends. But using Lucifer's language, I am personally going to make a commitment to change my language and use some different words, using the gift of language that the Lord has given us to we make these distinctions on the basis of ethnicity because we're just trying to identify it. But I like reclaiming our language back and parroting or describing the actual behavior that we see and assigning it terms. I love the mud culture acronym, the menacing, unruly, thuggish, and wasn't there another T to it, or was it just MUT? Yeah, the mud culture, the orangutan, the what's the other one? The pavement ape. To be clear, this is not referencing what people look like. It is describing the behavior. And I know those terms make a lot of you uncomfortable. And that's good. I want you to be as uncomfortable with that as I was. I was very uncomfortable. Now, I wholly embraced a ratchet tang. That's my new word. You're gonna hear a lot. I embraced that word because I was like, yes, that's what we're seeing on these airlines. That's what we're seeing in public spaces where you see the young woman with the bonnet on, showing out, showing her behind, just acting a fool. That's the ratchetang behavior. And when you see those smash and grabs, and when you see a bunch of teenagers descending upon the city of Chicago, enacting violence and just wrathful behavior, those are pavement apes. I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm describing the behavior. However, with that being said, I do recognize that such language can be a stumbling block. So I need to properly contextualize that language. And when I'm speaking about segments of the population, I will use those kinds of terms. But when I'm literally trying to identify an image bearer by name, I probably got to figure out the best way to handle that. As you can see, you guys, I'm trying to figure out what to do with these new terms. And I don't want to use them. So I was about to say I don't want to use them to demean or shame, but I kind of do, right? Because until we feel sorrow and shame over our sin, oftentimes it is the shame that the Holy Spirit uses. At least for me, that's how it works. I need it to be shame. It's the shame of the Holy Spirit that the Lord uses to regenerate us and raise us to newness of life. So I don't know. I know a lot of people may not like the show, and I'm okay with that. But we need more. Sister Sonia says more insightful and based platforms like this. I love that I'm growing with April. Thank you. Thanks for all you do. Blessings to you, sister. I look forward to seeing so many of y'all in the chat. And when you're not here, I don't take it personal, but I'll be like, I kind of miss them. I wonder where Susan Q is. She's always here. But it's okay. Y'all got lives. Y'all got families. I get to do this because my husband is so gracious and he knows that I just love engaging with you guys. And so he sacrificially is just like, hey, go ahead. I'm gonna be right there in the studio, working the camera and doing whatever I can to help you. So I love you, babe. Thank you. Thank you for your support. All right, you guys, one announcement I don't have an overlay for it. I'm sorry, but y'all, we are less than 30 days away from the G3 2023 conference. Like, it snuck up on me. I ain't even lose all the weight that I had said I was gonna lose. Like, I'm freaking out, right? Because it's close. And I'm excited because I'm looking forward to seeing so many of you at the conference. This conference will probably sell out. We are approaching, I think we've surpassed 7,500 registrations already. 8,000 is the goal to sell it out. We could very well do that. And so what I want to do is mention the conference again. The G3 2020 conference taking place September 21st through the 23rd. That's in a couple of weeks. And I will be at the conference. And the conference theme this year is the sovereignty of God. And we're going to be spending a lot of time listening from some gifted men who are just expositors of God's word, who can take the scriptures, open them up, and tell us not what they think, not how to live our best life with some 1, 2, 3 step, process improvement program, but open up and say, this is what the scriptures teach about God's sovereignty. He is the sovereign of the universe, and he is worthy of worship. So I will be there at that conference, listening to some God-honoring preaching, hugging all my kinsmen, the ones that look like me and the ones that don't, from every tribe, nation, and tongue. I will be there, and it's going to be sweet fellowship with the brethren. I am hoping that you will join me. If you want to save 30% off of your registration, you need to use promo code TSOTP. Is that my code? TSOTP. So go to g3men.org and use that promo code. That promo code is still good to save yourself 30% off your registration. A lot of hotels have sold out, but what I'm suggesting that people do, if you can make your way to Atlanta, whether you are driving or taking a horse and buggy, do Airbnb. It is at the Georgia International Congress Center, not the Georgia World Congress Center. That's GWCC. This is at GICC, which is closer to the airport. See if you can find you something at the courtyard, or if not, do Airbnb. I would love to see some of you, if y'all can connect somehow offline, to say, let's just get a house together, 3 bedrooms, work that out. You can save yourself some bread and keep some bread in your pocket. But I want to see you guys there. It is going to be an amazing conference. The pre-conference that takes place on Wednesday, I am also making plans to be there as well. Brother K-Dib True from All Things Theology will be there. Jason Whitaker from Dear Well Christian will be there. Rick Caldwell from Caldwell Apologetics will be there. I believe Alton Johnson will be there. Obviously, Virgil Walker is going to be there, and Darrell Bernard Harrison's going to be there. There's just so many. Delano Squires from Fearless is going to be there. So many people are going to be there but you. So you need to do something about that and register. So I just wanted to put that bug in y'all's ear. Anyway, love you guys. I don't have anything else to talk about tonight. I am famished. I haven't eaten all day. I've fasted. And man shall not live by bread alone, but I want some bread. I'm hungry. So y'all take care. I love you with the love of the Lord. Grace and peace.
God is sovereign over everything. He is sovereign over the entire universe. He is sovereign over nature. He literally has created everything that exists out of nothing.
It is the doctrine of sovereign election that empowers and ignites missions, and it is the doctrine of sovereign election that guarantees the success of missions around the world.
We will not build the church according to the changing whims of an ungodly culture. We will change that ungodly culture by the power of the immutable gospel.
All I have is God wrapped himself in flesh, died on a cross, nailed my sin thereto, was placed in the grave, rose again on the 3rd day, ascended to the right hand of the Father, and is there making intercession for me until such time as my salvation is completed and he takes me home.
The more they see, the more they will love him. Stop giving them all this silly fodder and life principles and lay before them. Live your life in solitude, crying out to God. Live your life on your knees. Live your life with your Bibles torn asunder. Live your life for the people of God to be able to present to them the beauty of what he is, the glory of his cross,
There is no such thing as Mother Nature. God rules and reigns over everything. There's not a leaf that falls from a tree that God did not call it to fall at that very moment. God is in control of every single thing, meticulously ruling over the entire universe.
Join us for the 2023 G3 National Conference on the Sovereignty of God.